All right, we'll call the meeting to order. In accordance with the open meeting law, the board states for the record, this meeting is being recorded by NORCAM and may be recorded by other local media. The meeting is also being recorded by the town of North Reading via Zoom. If you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could please remain standing just for a moment of silence to remember and send your thoughts and prayers for retired Chief O'Brien, Ed O'Brien. Thank you. I'd like three things to start off with. We're being joined virtually. Our member, Mr. Studo, is joining us virtually. Our second item to note for the record, we had one agenda item for executive session this evening, and we received a request, public records request for executive session minutes. So that exemption was inadvertently left off of the written agenda, but we did take a motion with regard to that for those of us joining virtually and in person. The law requires the board to take up that request for those minutes in executive session and review them to determine whether or not any privilege remains intact. So just for the record, we did take a motion that included two different exemptions. One including to review those executive sessions. There were quite a few of them. And the third thing I'd like to just start off with is to send it over to my colleague, Mr. O'Leary, to give us a little few words about our retired Chief Ed O'Brien.
Eddie O'Brien was a friend, public servant, and longtime member of the community and fire department, obviously. He joined the fire department in 1974, achieved the rank of captain in 1991, and was our chief from 1993 to 2005 when he retired due to disability. Eddie had a awful diagnosis a few years back of a rare neurological disorder, which finally got the best of him, unfortunately at a very young age of 66. Again, very well respected member of the community and the department. He was a strong advocate for the fire department, and while he was a rank and file member, he was also had the pleasure of sitting across the table with him, negotiating several contracts, and he always had the interest of his fellow firefighters, their safety, their education, the work environment, but paramountly also the safety of the public at large at the same time. So again, he was well respected, not just through the community, but through the region and the state. He sat on a number of boards and committees in his status as chief. In addition to that, he was a volunteer for the Metro Boston Critical Incident Stress Management Team. He was a founding member, which provides peer assistance to first responders after traumatic events. He volunteered for that team for 20 years. As part of that team, he responded to the Worcester Cold Storage fire, as well as the World Trade Center in New York, 9/11. So a tremendous public servant, terrible loss for his family, again to his wife Stacy, as his Sean, his son, who happens to be following in his footsteps as a North Reading firefighter and president of the local firefighters union, and his daughter Hillary. Heartfelt condolences and a true public acknowledgement of his service to the community and acknowledge his loss. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary, for remembering him to the community. And we do our condolences go out to him and his family, and also to his colleagues that are in the fire department. Just ask the community to send your positive thoughts and prayers and wishes to the family and to his colleagues. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next order of business, which is public comment. So if you are joining us or in person, if you're joining us, if you could indicate raised hand or some other indication of online so we know, and in person, please come up to the podium, and if you could state your name for the record.
Is it all right, Mr.
Sure.
Stewart? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, is that?
Good evening. My name is Adam Austin. I live at 42 Main Street. This evening, my comments are directed to the 3 members of the Select Board that are not members of the Wastewater Planning and Advisory Committee. I hope and believe that the information in my comments will be as surprising and disappointing to you as it was to me when I uncovered it. The information in the presentations that the Wastewater Planning and Advisory Committee and the Wastewater Working Group presented to the remainder of the Select Board and subsequently to the people of the town in workshops contained false and misleading information. I will point out 2 examples. The presentation to the Select Board dated September 28, 2022, and the Town Resident Information Session presentation dated October 11, 2022, both state that the wastewater study contractor's financial analysis was based on their performance of, and I quote, a 3-year average water use analysis to assign sewer units. In fact, 2 water use analyses were performed, one for the water use of each property over 3.5 years and a second over 5 years. The Wastewater Planning and Advisory Committee and the Wastewater Working Group then took the 2 sets of results and decided on a property-by-property basis which data set would be used and applied the more detrimental standard to each individual property. Stating that the same 3-year standard was applied across the board is clearly misleading. Next, sewer unit assignments. The presentation to the Select Board dated September 28, 2022, and the Town Resident Information Session presentation dated October 11, 2022, both note that the calculations are rounded up to the nearest 0.25 sewer units, the equivalent of 32.75 gallons per day. In reality, even with the worst of 2 standards assignment method that they used, the water usage of single-family homes was rounded down by 2%, and the average condominium usage was rounded up by more than 20%. The equivalent sewer unit calculation example given on slide 28 of the presentation to the Select Board is correct based on traditional reasonable mathematics, but 100% false based on the description below it on the slide and the methodology used in the proposal. This reasonable but false example was changed in the same slide for subsequent presentation to the people of the town, as it unintentionally highlights the absurdity of the roundup by 20% method. These facts are just a small sample of the misleading and dishonest information in the reports from the Wastewater Working Group and the Wastewater Planning and Advisory Committee. That is why it is so critical that their deliberations be held in a forum that is open to the public. The 3 of you can make a difference. As I'm sure you know, I have made my opinion clear that I believe the Wastewater Planning and Advisory Committee and the Wastewater Working Group are legally obligated to operate with transparency to the public. The town administrator and town council have been very cordial, but they have made it clear that they believe that these groups have the legal right to deliberate behind closed doors. The 3 of you do not need to agree with either side. It doesn't matter whether my assertion is correct or whether the assertion of the town administrator and the town council is correct. The 3 of you can choose to require that future deliberations, rather than just conclusions of these bodies, be transparent to the people of North Reading. If you choose to exercise that power, the people of our town will be the real winners. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? And Mr. Gilbert, you're gonna have to help me because I can't really see what you're seeing on there.
I didn't, Mr. Studo, was your hand up?
Yes. Hi.
Mr. Studo?
I can wait until the rest of public comment, but I'd like to address one of the comments after, please.
Okay, can we just, if there's anybody that would wish to speak, if you could step to the podium and just state your name and your comment, please.
Hello, my name is Paul De Niro, 402 Park Street. And I don't know if it's a comment or a question, I guess it's a question. When you come up with the plan that we've seen over the last couple of months, the abutters were paying for the pipeline coming from the Andover Lawrence wastewater system. Am I correct there?
I'll have to do-
I don't know if that's a correct statement or not. Is that a correct statement? It's going up to the Andover Lawrence, what do you call it? Where they clean the water.
So they're,
Treatment plant.
yeah, yes.
I mean, listen, I appreciate that my colleagues want an input, but this is really just an opportunity for you to provide public comment. It's not a public hearing, although we are gonna address wastewater, so maybe that would answer some of your questions. But if you could just bring it to your public comment, that would be.
Okay, well, anyway, what I want to say about that is that I spoke to Mr. O'Leary privately, I guess, after a meeting. And I think you confirmed that. But anyway, the abutters are being asked to pay for the pipeline. My question is, why should the abutters pay for the pipeline from somewhere in the north part of North Reading going up to Lawrence? Because everyone in the town is going to be using that eventually. So why isn't that cost being spread out amongst everyone in the town? Because, we can't be abutters to the whole, we are only abutters to 100 feet or so of the pipeline, not to the 7 miles that go up to Andover, up to Lawrence. I just wanted to have that comment. I think it's unfair to put that onus on the abutters.
Okay, Mr. De Niro, the comment is that in terms of the entire pipeline, that it would be unfair that only those that are along the stretch where the sewer is proposed be contributing to the cost of that. That's in essence what
Right, I mean, maybe there should be something that says there has to be so many residential homes, so many condo homes, or so many apartments, whatever, in order to justify billing these people for the main line. If it's not, then it should maybe fall back on the town, gives more subsidy, because there's not enough people to represent that stretch. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then my last question is your, informing us that you had some meetings in executive session. I apologize that I don't really know what you're talking about.
No, we didn't have any meetings. I mean, we have regular executive sessions, meetings that are posted for different reasons, and we would put them on an agenda. But we recently received a request for public records, a public records request, which included the request to turn over copies of executive session minutes. So this evening, we went into executive session to review those minutes, in addition to another reason we went into executive
Did it
session.
have anything to do with the wastewater system?
No, it did not, but we have to take that request and make sure that we, answer it within a certain number of days, because it's a public records request, and because it's a request for executive session minutes, it goes back for a year or so.
Okay.
So, but it had nothing to do with the specific, and we did not meet in executive session meetings on the wastewater matter. So I just want to eliminate, if I led to the impression that we were meeting on wastewater, please, for anyone that's listening,
No, I just didn't know.
that's
I
fact,
just didn't know
that's
what you-
incorrect
I didn't know what
totally.
you're talking about at all, so I
Yeah.
just had.
We've never met in executive session on wastewater, so let me just correct
Okay.
that impression for the record.
And my last comment, I'd like you to maybe answer at some point from other meetings, is that, in talking to people about this, I understand, I don't know if it's true or not, but I understand that the select board made a change to the voting rules earlier than when I first got involved in these meetings, probably in the last summer, where it used to be that the abutters, you did require 50% of the abutters to approve the wastewater project, otherwise it would fail. And the select board had that voted out. And there was another segment of it where you needed, I don't know, so many people in town, but anyway, about 2 or 3 items that were eligible to the residents of town were taken away from the town residents. And so that really put the town residents at a disadvantage with this project coming up, because now you only need 2/3 of the vote of the people who are present to get this system to pass. And you don't, and the towns, the abutters can't stop you. I'd like to know if that's true and what we can do to try to vote that back in. Is that possible?
And again, Mr. De Niro, through the chair, please, through the chair. So let me correct the misinformation. We don't, the select board doesn't change the rules and the voting rules, and the select board didn't vote on anything like that. There are warrant articles that were taken up at town meetings, so the town meeting votes on those
Well, I
warrant
understand
articles.
that it's all legal and everything, the town voted, you didn't vote yourself, but.
Well, we can if we're town voters, we're part of the collective group, of course. But we don't change rules or things like that. It's basically warrant articles that were voted on at the town meeting.
But if everyone in the town isn't aware of it, and it's their fault for not being here, I understand that. But, you know, things do go bump in the night everywhere in the world. And so, I'm just saying, however it happened, the townspeople in North Reading lost their ability to be a significant party to this project. And right now, the way it looks, we have absolutely no power at all. We just have to plead to you to be reasonable and not to give us a life sentence, if you will. Anyway, that's my remarks. Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. But also, then nothing is, I know we're not supposed to be interactive, but I just want to be clear. Because Mr. Austin has said things in public comment the past couple of meetings that I've just really had to address because they're not accurate. And I do no disrespect, I appreciate you coming here, and he's been sitting through our meetings, which we do appreciate. But we don't, it all is coming to the town meeting floor. So not only is the warrant published, but during COVID, we've been actually holding public meetings before the meetings about all of this, in addition to all of the public meetings that we hold. So we've had quite a bit of attendance during those. We hold virtual meetings to go over all the warrant articles and take questions.
Well, and I appreciate everyone's work. This is
Thank you.
difficult.
Thank you.
difficult.
Oh, nothing's been decided yet, so we want to make sure there are certain things the town voted to approve moving forward on at the town meetings, which is included the studies, the feasibility study. There were things that the town meeting voted to move forward on, so.
Is that in June?
That, I wouldn't know, and again, this is really not, we can, if you wanna put your specific questions in, we can go back to those particular warrant articles to tell you when and what those votes were. I don't really remember it off the top of my head, but there are really only 2 town meetings per year unless we have special meetings. So there may be 2 or 3 per year. And so we really didn't change the voting requirements on these. We weigh in and give a recommendation, and the town votes on these things.
This wouldn't be taken up in a special meeting, would it?
I'm sorry?
I said this, you know, what do you call this meeting, this information wouldn't be taken up in a special meeting, would it? It would have to be a town meeting?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No,
Okay.
it was a town meeting.
Okay,
Yes.
and I have one other comment that I think to make things easier for you folks, certainly would make it easier for I think townspeople. Is there any way that we could put together a, 1 or 2 people as advocates for the town and discuss this with you rather than having, 50 people ask questions and stuff?
Again, we can definitely take this recommendation, but quite frankly, we would prefer 50 people interacting
Oh,
in
really?
our
Okay,
public
I haven't
hearings.
talked
Yes.
enough then.
The more people that come out to these public meetings, the better, these public hearings to discuss this, the better. And in fact, the board has taken the feedback to go back and look at these things. So, so I think, I can't speak for everyone here, but we would rather have 50, 500 people show up at these meetings, as long as we don't go over capacity, but.
Oh, I appreciate that because
Yeah.
I
It's
feel as
better.
though I'm walking into your house and.
No,
this
that's
is
not at
our
all.
I know, it's our house, I know,
It's
but
ours,
I kind
yes.
of feel like.
But we
I'm not
appreciate
used to
that
that.
you show up here. That's right. We don't normally have this colloquy back and forth, but the past couple of times, we don't want the members of the public to believe the impression that they're secret meetings, because there's, quite frankly, are not. So, people are given the charges and they're doing their jobs here in the town, the town employees, many of whom reside in the community. They're doing the work that they need to do based on the charges that were given on town meeting floor.
Well, that's good information and it makes me feel good, maybe you could write an article and explain how the town works once a year or something like that.
Okay, we appreciate your comment.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Gilberto, is there anybody else that would like to speak here that's in person, or anybody? Mr. Gilberto, please come and join us.
My name's Dave Woodland. I live on Oak Ave.
I didn't catch your name, sir.
Dave Woodland. I know Mr. O'Leary for over many years, his brothers and the rest of the family. I've known you've been voted in and all hired. Here's a quick question, and it's to all of you guys, and I know you don't live in town.
Yes, he does.
Oh, you don't live in town?
Again, please,
The only reason why I'm asking is, I want,
let's just keep it through the chair, sir, okay?
okay. How many of you people live on this west side of town? On the side of where all this is going through? Do any of you live on this part of town?
The west side of the town.
Well, this is the west side of town. We're on the other side of 28. And if you follow 62 the right way, that's going west. So this would be the west side of town. Do any of you live on this side of town? Do you have to come up with the $46,000 to come up with this? I know your taxes might go up a little bit, but do you have to pay for the abundance fees? I didn't think so. We do, people that are complaining about this. I'm on a fixed income, and even though, quote unquote, taxes went down, but sure, the assessment on our houses went up. And I know when 2.5 goes through, and even more with this sewage system, most of the people will not be able to live in this town. And the only thing you can do to bring into this town might be more condos. But as Mr. O'Leary said, his friends moved the good old Melrose so they could walk to town in the center. And I can walk right up here. I got supermarket, liquor stores, 3 major liquor stores in this town I could walk to, and I don't even drink. But I mean, it's just, you gotta understand, the people that live on this side of 28 this way, we don't get much. we get the traffic, we get the trucks, and everything else. Yes, I know some trucks do make it through 62 that go on towards Middleton. But we handle most of all the stuff over here. We can't even get our roads fixed. But you wanna dig them up. You know, if you really look at it, even North Street right here, 2.5 ton limit. There's 18 wheels going up and down this road all the time. And you can ask all my neighbors, I hear them all day long, and I do too, and I don't exactly live on North Street or 62. Something else has to be done to this town besides digging up more roads to put sewer in to try to bring in what? You have no game plan for anything coming in, and the biggest thing that ever came into this town, we had no right to say anything about it, and that was the United States Postal Service that took over one building, theirs, or Amy's, or everybody might remember, and where Grant's is, where Walmart is, well, Walmart is, where Grant's was, but we've always been on septic. And my septic system is only 20 years old. Works fine. I pay $250 every 2 years to have it taken care of, and I got no problem with it. And so does everybody else that has a septic system. If they take care of it, it's a lot cheaper. Instead of sending all our wastewater to the Merrimack River, where it happens to overflow with Lowell, Lawrence, and all these other towns that overflow right into the Merrimack, and then the people that want to go swimming in the Merrimack can't even go in the water. So, I mean, we got a lot of different other things to think about. EPA. Ipswich River is one of the driest rivers going dry, and yet we don't put the groundwater back into the ground to help save the Ipswich River. And all these different things. You know, there's so much money that the town wants from us, but a lot of us can't afford it. I was all for the high school. I have no kids. I was for it. How am I gonna pass this off to somebody else that I can't even expect them to take care of it? I mean, there's a lot of things you guys gotta think about, especially if you don't live on this side of the town. Can't even get Route 62, Lowell Road, fixed. Put all those apartments and condos in. You can't even put a sidewalk up our street going along 62. Can't even get that road wide, but you can do from Kitty's to the Middleton line years ago. Maybe Brad Jones should sit on some of these meetings. I know, quote unquote, this has nothing really to do with him, but even though he sends a few checks our way, but it really doesn't help out the situation. But there's a lot more that you guys gotta think about, like the high school roof or what else roof, all these other vehicles, all these other things that the town needs. What's better served? A sewer system, septic for people that can afford it. You know, now they're going about $40,000-$50,000 to be put in for brand new houses that people can't afford. I don't know about you guys. I live on the west, on this side of town. I know I wouldn't be able to afford it. That's my statement. You guys can do what you want with it, but thank you.
Thank you for participating. One person joining us.
Ms. Schiavone.
Ms. Schiavone, can you hear us?
I can, thank you. Can you hear me as well?
Yes.
Hi, I did just want to raise a question that I had. I've raised this with the town hall and I haven't received a response yet. But in the past, up until maybe through November, I received emails because I signed up for them to receive the agenda. So usually for the select board meetings on a Monday, which I know are twice a month, I would receive on Friday the proposed agenda. So if I wanted to attend, I would be able to have the opportunity to. But during the month of December, these emails have disappeared. So I'm just wondering if something has changed in terms of the distribution of these emails. Just, it would be great instead of having to go to check the northreading.gov website to check to see when there's a meeting rather than to have it just sent to my email as it was before.
For sure. I don't have an answer to that, although Mr. Gilberto might.
Madam Chair, through you, yeah, the practice generally is to submit those emails out. I have to check and see whether that was sent on Thursday or not. There are folks here who generally get that, the other folks nodding no, so.
I put in a call today to Brian. I know it's been a problem for the last couple of months. I
Okay.
left a message for him. But it is true. And Tom even signed it a second time and still hasn't done it.
All right, we will we'll look into that then, but, folks should be receiving an electronic notice at least 48 business hours in advance of the select board meeting, advising them the board meetings are happening, and we'll look into that.
Right, and you don't have to give your email here, Ms. Schiavone, but if you would just reach out directly to the TA, and so the TA has your email to add you back onto that list. We don't really know what's going on with that, but we want to make sure that we're giving people who sign up the agendas for sure. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I concur.
Sure, so I'm just supposed to send, contact the town administrator.
Yes,
right?
you don't have to give us your email now. during the meeting.
Sure.
All right, I mean, just email it directly.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe we have your email, Ms. Schiavone, so I think we're all set.
All right. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Michael, I can't see.
I don't see any other hands raised, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. And we're all set for public comment? All right, we're all set for public comment. Mr. Studer, can I move on to the next order of business?
Indulge me for a minute, if you may. And I apologize to everyone, I'm remote for, a little under the weather, so this was a safer bet. So one thing I just want to say, and, I'll accept a lot, I get it, when you're in this spot, working, as an elected official. However, I really have a problem with being called dishonest. I have a major issue with that. And for Mr. O'Leary to be called that, and the town administrator, and a lot of different people, and people we hired from a mandate from town meeting. I understand that sometimes there's a lot of information here, a lot of different ways to interpret it. There's been a lot of presentations. But dishonest is a really big word. To call someone dishonest, for the volunteer time, for the time people give up, for the time I do as a member of the community with 4 kids in the school system and a lot of friends around North Reading. And I'd just like to say, there's a lot of emotions with this, differing opinions, but let's keep it to those facts. Whether you agree, disagree, a lot of different interpretations. I work in a world where there's a million interpretations. It shouldn't be, but there's been a lot of presentations, a lot of slides, trying to give as much information as possible, a lot of time. By the way, I'm not sure, but I will let everyone know, just in case you don't, select board members make $0 in North Reading. This is all volunteer. So there's no win here to not give the best information possible, but let's just be cognizant when we say certain words. Dishonest it's not a nice word, and you know what, sometimes it is warranted if somebody is not being honest. I understand, but let's be careful to group everyone in and then come in front of this board and say to 3 out of the 5 select board members, your other 2 members are liars, and you should somehow disagree. And now I am so happy that this meeting is being recorded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Studo. I don't know if there's any other discussion point before we move on. But I don't think we need to get into a dialogue. I don't think that our colleagues are dishonest, but I do appreciate when people come forward and give some feedback and some consideration, because normally no one ever comes to these meetings, but the people that have been volunteering for years and years and years on different things. So we definitely appreciate when we hear from people about the things that we're trying to move forward towards the strategic goals for the town. Unfortunately, sometimes the dialogue gets into a realm of reputational challenges and things like that. I do find that unfortunate. I don't think my colleagues are dishonest by trying to get as much information out there as possible, but I understand that people have differences of opinions in terms of that. But we're here, we appreciate people showing up, we appreciate people giving their feedback, we appreciate people giving their thoughts, their particular circumstances. People share very, sometimes personal information with us to help, get us directed on things on behalf of the town. We appreciate that. But, as far as our colleagues here and the people that are employed here that are working on this, they're here late nights, sitting in these meetings, late evenings, that we don't even see the work that they do. And so we really do appreciate the work that they put into it. So, unless there's anything else, public comments closed, and I do want to move on because the next item is the wastewater update. So I think it's important for us to hear from Mr. Parisi if we can move on. All set, Ms. Parisi, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for
I'm
being
going to
here.
turn down the lights a little bit.
Sure.
So you can see the presentation. Yeah, the method.
I think it sounds,
Yeah.
Is there any popcorn?
No
We'll get Rotten Tomato ratings and popcorn ratings afterwards. But Madam Chair, I think it's important to note, just in light of some of the comments that have been made, that this is the first time that the board as a whole is going to be seeing this, and again, it's going to be very brief, just as an update, and that there's been no conferring between board members, other than Mr. Studo and I through a subcommittee, but the other three members that were being addressed earlier, this is the first time you've been seeing it, and same time the public has been seeing it, just from a transparency standpoint.
All right. Thank you. So a brief update, few slides here. So when we last updated the select board, I guess from November 7th, there was a recommendation to delay holding a special town meeting, also to allow some more time to consider some things and incorporate feedback from the community that we received from our outreach program. We will look to investigate other financial models for a more affordable betterment. We did hear, the cost was significant, unaffordable to a lot of people, a lot of property owners. So we wanted to consider having the general fund perhaps pay a greater portion of the project costs in order to reduce the amount of the project costs to be assessed as betterments and as sewer privilege fees. Perhaps also consider offering residential opt-out or similar strategy that would not assess betterments to residential properties unless those property owners choose to connect, need to connect if the system failed, what have you. Something that wasn't forced upon the residential property owners. More time to consider integrating other funding sources that could reduce the cost of the project and therefore the cost to the taxpayers and abutters to the sewer project. And so time would allow us that. In fact, we have some information we'll talk about shortly. But also conduct additional outreach efforts on other financing models. So after we sort of look at perhaps other ways of funding the project, that there would be some additional outreach. Review the new financing models with the boards and committees, utilize some direct contacts to reach out, engage property owners, and really have a better dialogue with maybe some specific projects or find out about some specific projects that could be sewer dependent, that type of thing. Hold meetings with the abutters, the municipal wastewater system, hold community-wide meetings to discuss costs and benefits of the sewer system. And proceed with final design of Route 114 section of the wastewater, getting the sewer flowing from our borders through a bit of Andover, North Andover, into Lawrence perhaps, or some other routes that became options to us through the actual gravity systems of town of Andover and town of North Andover. So all that is still something to continue discussions and negotiations with those two communities. So going to where we are today, or trying to move forward from where we are today, potential project model changes. So, I think we could look at a model that could significantly reduce betterments. We could look at a model that eliminates the betterments altogether and require abutters only to pay a fee when they choose to connect to the sewer system at some point in time. We could shift the cost in whole or in part, the amount of the project cost that would have been funded by the betterments, shift that now to be paid by the taxpayers townwide. Set fees, though, to connect to the sewer. So in other words, if and when you decide you want to connect, there would be a fee associated with it. So the amounts of the fee would, we believe, be significantly less than the amounts that were contemplated under the betterment model, which was $46,000 for a single family and about $36,000 for condos. So we would plan to use the revenues from the sewer connection fees to reduce the amount charged to taxpayers townwide. So that'd be a reserve, those fees would be reserved to be used for funding debt service. So in any given year, you can appropriate some money and reduce the cost of the townwide debt exclusion amount that year. Also, we could incorporate the additional funding sources that we talked about. We have identified what looks to be about $1.5 million in federal funding for final design through Congressman Moulton, Senators Warren and Markey, and $250,000 in state funding for design permitting through Rep. Jones, Senator Tarr. State revolving fund loans also, excuse me, we've heard that we are eligible for lower revolving fund loans at an interest rate of 2.4, like a 30-year loan. So there's some lesser costs and interest there. And I guess we could also consider using some of any new growth that is generated from sewer new growth properties. We could use the new property tax revenue that's attributable to installing the sewers to offset some of that debt as well. So those are the excuse me, those are the potential project models that we want to consider and look a little bit more closely at, and try to come back to you with some details on it. So I'll stop here for some questions.
Is that the end of your, Ms. Frazee, is that the end of your slide presentation?
There's one more on some scheduling. What we think is some scheduling information that we can talk about. I can go to that and see real quick.
Yeah, would that include when you think you could have that analysis back to us?
Yeah, I think, well, it's a tight schedule, but I think, we need to keep moving forward and try to bring this to a point where everybody understands what the information is, ask as many questions as they may have of it, and then get back to the outreach meetings, and then eventually try to get this in front of town meeting for a vote. So, right now, we're Monday, January 9th, looking to move forward from this with workshops and do the outreach meeting. But we will come back with some details once we get some direction from you to do so.
Mr. Gilberto?
Sorry, Mr. Parisi said what I was going to say, that we're looking to really focus on the bullet points on that last slide as concepts, get some feedback from the board or from whoever else wishes to offer the feedback, and then take the financial modeling to that next step where we would bring it back to the board here to review, and if we're all in agreement, back to extensive outreach once again. So we haven't scheduled those dates because we want to be respectful of the deliberative process. And again, as I've said many times here and in other forums, we're not making decisions with regard to this, but we are trying to present information that's useful for discussion purposes for you and for the community as a whole.
To my colleagues, we have the finance committee chair here, so I'm just gonna look to Mrs. Hurlbut, who has her hand right. Mrs. Hurlbut.
Yeah, I have two issues. First of all, I think it would be certainly exciting to have an end date by which you have to accomplish all these things, such as a suggested date for a special town meeting. Otherwise, this could go on for years. But my biggest concern, and also the concern of the finance committee, is that it's going to take a good 5 years before you have this sewer in the ground. Which means it's gonna take a good 5 years before you start collecting anything to speak of. And even longer before you have additional tax revenue from suggested construction on, say, 28 or whatever, because there are now sewers. The question of how you finance those 5 years is a very serious question, which I really don't think the town has appropriately addressed so far. It's one thing to say, okay, so we're gonna take part of the betterment fees and we'll apply them to offset the borrowing costs that the town has incurred and this, that, and the other thing, but you're not gonna get those fees until the sewer's completed. And what do you do for 5 years? That's, I think, a concern of the finance committee, among other concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mrs.
You're
Hurlbut.
welcome.
All right, do you have, for the people that are joining us, when we talk about the annual town meetings, we did want, as a board, we discussed separating out the vote on this particular item for its own standalone special town meeting, which is publicized just the same way as we would a regular town meeting, where we would be addressing the issues here, public hearings, submitting a warrant, et cetera, having a virtual meeting before the meeting like we've been doing. I imagine we'll follow that same process in addition to all these public hearings. Is there because we also were proceeding based on the other work that's being done in the area by DOT, we were proceeding on an accelerated timeline given that, but had put the brakes on based on the members of the public participating in these public interaction meetings on the models that have been explained. So we were coming back to the drawing board to look at these things all over again based on the public feedback during those public informational hearings. So what is the expectation? And I agree with Mrs. Hurlbut that we really have been studying this for a while. We have a feasibility study that the town voted to approve a long time ago that really should be wrapped up at this point. I mean, that was supposed to be done a while ago, and I know it's COVID and everything else like that, but in anticipation of hitting the deadlines you had on your second page, what's the goal for the special town meeting? And I don't, Mr. Parisi or Mr. Gilberto, if you could answer.
Through you, Madam Chair, we continue to operate against a deadline that plans for us submitting a final design to the State Department of Transportation to be included in its bid package for the planned 114 road reconstruction project and utility relocation project in North Andover. Based on that timeline, we've been told by the consultants to use a working deadline of about April 15th for planning purposes. And keep in mind, we're able to do that because we did continue with the final design that was funded a year ago, October, at the October town meeting. That design has continued, as was indicated at the November 7th presentation that was on the previous slide. But I think for planning purposes right now, planning to be part of that bid package with the state, our plans to be bid out with their plans, April 15th would be the date for town meeting, the latest.
So we be,
So the answer is that April 15th is the latest that we're
So-
working off of right now.
2023.
In terms of
2023.
this timeline, it's on TBD, we're trying to lock in some
Right.
specifics. And the expectation being that where our design work is in tandem with some other design work that's being submitted to the state, that we would be expecting a special town meeting to occur in April, mid-April, April 15th specifically. I don't know if it's gonna be that specific date, but we would be, presenting this well in advance at these public meetings and then warrant and publishing for the public hearing. So there'll be many opportunities prior to that point.
The problem is there isn't a lot of time between.
Can you
now.
wait to be recognized, because your colleague had his hand raised as well, and I'd like to get everyone a chance to speak. And I would like to recognize our, thank you, I'd like to recognize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. She always steps on me. My question is, and it is really what Adam was saying. It is only 3 months from now, April town, if we do a mid-April town meeting. When will we have a model that looks at what you're going to do about the betterment, if anything, if we even have a betterment, and what the impact is going to be on the town-wide addition to the tax rate as an exclusion item, so people have some idea of what this is going to cost them. I mean, it's gone back and forth from a fairly large betterment and a fairly large general tax amount to perhaps a much larger tax amount and a smaller betterment. But I think people need to know what that means for them to make any kind of an educated decision in a town meeting you're thinking of having in 3 months. I mean, that's, I think, pretty ambitious. When decisions haven't been made about what it is you're doing with respect to the betterment, even at this point. So, not saying we shouldn't do it, but I think we need to have a plan and get this stuff out to people, not the beginning of April for an April town meeting. I think needs to come out a lot sooner than a couple of weeks before town meeting for people to digest it, ask their questions, understand it, you get feedback. So I'm just curious as to, in a more granular sense, what the schedule really looks like or what it will look like.
So I could just also, I want you to answer if you can, but I know the opt-out model was something that was already presented to the board previously. And I think that there has to be some more study done of the cost factor, the cost factor to allowing the opt-out, and where do we shift that burden, how do we pay for that burden. But that piece of these models was, I think, already presented. I think you both were here when that piece was presented. But Mr. Parisi, you're on the hot seat anyway, so you might as well give us some timeline. I mean, we're really hearing over and over again, and it's very hard to predict financially the rewards that are gonna yield from this after it's constructed. This is the growing pains that include the financial growing pains until that time comes, and everybody sitting in this room recognizes that. But I understand that would be hard to predict, but we had this study, and these same people, we were all sitting in the room a long time ago before it was approved, with this sort of timeline of deadlines of when we were gonna get what information. And that, I think, is I know I'm pressing upon you, but when do you think these items will be completed and compiled so that we can, even if we are to see each separate model or module that you're talking about, which I believe is now 4, when can we see that? When do you think that will be done? And please, to those listening, understand that these are people that are working around the clock, hundreds of hours put into this, including the consultant. So it's not as though they're focused on much of anything else at this point, but I don't know if you have an idea of that.
Well, my target would be to continue to work, not around the clock, let's hope, during, normal business hours to come up with a model that gives some of these options to you, ideally at your next meeting, but maybe in some other meeting after that. But as soon as possible, come back with some details once we have direction to do so.
Okay. Mr. O'Leary.
I want to either hop onto the hot seat with him or get him off it a little bit here. As far as the timeline associated, first of all, the Mass DOT project is sort of what driving the timeline as far as moving forward with this project, and the necessity for financing it will be driven by the time that they go out to bid, and we'll have to have money appropriated for it. We've been told by the consultants April 15th is a targeted deadline. I personally believe that can be moved out, even from our own personal standpoint, because I think we can appropriate the money at a later date in order to meet the obligations that we would have from a funding standpoint. But what I want to be cautious about, and I'm very sensitive to, is when we bring something forward to the board for your consideration, that you're going to have a couple of models to consider. And again, whether it's going to be no betterment, some sort of a betterment, to the people that are along the route, whether it's going to be all funded through the tax dollars or not. But also along with that, we have to be aware as far as the cash flow of when people, if we're going to do an opt-out, which is probably a likely more of an opt-in than an opt-out proposal. The time as to when people get in there, when we get these fees that will be assessed to them to join, will affect our cash flow, and how quickly we can pay down the bond and where the funding sources are going to come. Whether or not we're going to consider taking any new growth in this particular area, a portion of that, rather than just going into the general fund to help offset the debt service to pay this down as quickly as possible. So all those sorts of things are going to come into play, and cash flow is very important. In addition to that, we also have to consider, which is a very important consideration, not just with the board, but finance committee and the town as a whole, is, as we get this up and operating, there are going to be operating costs that are going to have to be subsidized through the general fund until enough people opt in to finance itself and pay for it, like an enterprise like the water department. So right off the bat, there'll be a subsidy from the general fund, I would imagine, and we should be able to hopefully forecast for the board, the finance committee, and town meeting, what that's going to look like. So from a cash flow standpoint, how much it's going to have to be subsidized over what period of time. So it's not going to be in 2 weeks. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be in 2 weeks. I think April 15th is again an aggressive timeline, and it's a worthy target. But I, for one, being intimately involved, am not going to rush it. And again, just for the general public, again, my colleagues are hearing this for the first time, you're hearing it for the first time. This is just where we're at in the process. And as I said publicly at many of the public meetings, we're putting this information out there so that the public can absorb it too at the same time and give us feedback in real time too. And again, I appreciate the Mr. Austins and the gentleman over here, coming forward and all the rest of it. While I may not agree with their characterization of things, I appreciate their paying attention and their vested interest in it. But everybody has a vested interest. Every member of the board here, we may not live in the west side of town, but it's going to impact us. We're well aware of the impact on the people who directly about it, and we're concerned about that. That's why we're taking the time to do this, to make it as palatable and realistic as possible. The price of it doesn't change. It's just a question of who's going to finance it and what portion of it, and how long can we do it. Now, what has changed since our last meeting is that we were talking about all of our models were based upon a 5% interest rate. We now have an opportunity to buy into something at 2.5%, 2 to 2.5% interest rate, which is substantially less from a cost standpoint. So all of this you're going to have to consider. So it's not going to be the next meeting, but I know that's a target. It's not going to be hit. Hopefully within a month we're going to have something for you to consider and look at. And before we go out to the public for more additional input, they'll be getting it as the rest of my colleagues are getting it here. But we're looking for direction from the board, once you get your information, to say, okay, this is what we're gonna go out and we're gonna propose. This is what we believe the proposal at town meeting is going to be, so that we can hone in on it. The board will have made that decision, not the subcommittee, and that's what we're gonna do. So hopefully, within a month, we'll have some models to present to you. We wanna go to the different boards, committees, and commissions that are directly impacted on this, and again, it's gonna impact everybody across the budget-wise. And then we'll go out to the public and explain to them why we still think it's important.
Okay. Do you have, Mr. Parisi, are you all set with your presentation?
I am.
All right, and do my colleagues have any other questions in regard to
I do.
Mr. Studo?
Sorry, I didn't know how else to get your attention, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Just another comment to make too. Part of the delay was that we finally, were given a realistic number of how much we can borrow at a very, very preferential rate that, hasn't existed in the general open markets now for about a year, which will considerably lower our cost of debt for a very sizable portion of the project. So that's another thing where we just didn't think it was prudent to come out with a model based on just kind of what we thought interest rate versus what is reality based on what we can get for, like I said, a sizable amount, so I just wanted to add that again, it's not, it's that we waited for as well to incorporate a lot of the feedback we got. Like we discussed, and I hope everybody hears this clear, it is looking and appearing like an opt-in option will be more of what the models will look at that will be presented to the entire board. Okay, so that means now that, irrespective of what the betterment or fee or this would be, well, if it's an opt-in and not an opt-out, you do the math. You don't have a cost unless you're in. So that's the sewer cost if you're in the system. So again, I just wanted to say that we're not delaying, and Mr. Kelleher, I know we've had discussions too and other things with it, but I totally agree that we have to get as much information as possible out there. I just didn't want to give numbers based on this conservative interest rate we were using that really hasn't been realistic from the start. And now we're getting more realistic rates in some of these lending facilities that we weren't sure how much we could borrow from. So we're actually going to deliver some pretty good news versus what initially was there. It just, again, like Mr. O'Leary said, a matter of how does the cost get spread out. And hopefully, Mrs. Hilbert, for your concern, hopefully these lower cost of borrowing will make those first 5 to 7 years that you said a lot more palatable versus market rate, which again, the models will give us the number and then, the finance committee will go to work and everybody, but again, that's another reason, not to get long-winded about it, but we wanted to make sure we were using appropriate lending rates before we were like, hey, finance committee, what do you think? And then 2 weeks later, we say, sorry, give me that back. I got to give you what we're really going to borrow at. So I just wanted to add that was probably the biggest delay in the new, we've been listening to what everyone's been saying about the different concepts they don't like and how to make it better and more equitable for everyone, including and primarily those in condo associations where, as a percentage, it was just not realistic once you took a look at it. But at the same time, we needed to see what exactly the borrowing cost would be, from the financial side. And those we just got, Mr. Gilberto, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's only been a couple of weeks, and a week of that was around Christmas when, no one's around.
Specifically, the notice of the $1.5 million that came through when the federal budget was signed on December 23rd or 24th. Certainly good news, but recently.
and then the funding. So again, I just wanted to add that it's not for a lack of not giving people enough time. It's for a lack that something this important, it's better to get it right than, to just put something out there so people, maybe turn the temperature down on your seat, air quotes, quicker. So thank you, Chair Kate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Studo. Mr. Parisi, you can sit if you're done with you can. We'll get to you if we have questions, okay? Mrs. Hurlbut.
Yeah, I'd like to know what a sizable amount is, regarding the state 2.5%.
Mr. Gilberto, can you give that answer, please? You have it?
Yeah, I mean, we have an estimate that's approaching $100 million worth of the project cost. We've asked our engineering consultants to review that in detail and determine what that allocation would be, but it is a substantial portion of the project cost that would be eligible for a much lower interest rate.
And then, can I also add something? I think that, I felt very strongly, as I'm sure you are aware, over the last 6 months concerning this project. And that is, that this is one of the largest projects this town has done. And it's a community project. And it needs, as far as I'm concerned, less going around to different committees and more, let's talk to the people and talk to them and see what they want, what their needs are, and have more community meetings and less isolated little committee meetings. Because as you know, in this town, most committees do not speak to one another to that degree. It's not that they don't love each other, they just don't, they're busy doing their own thing. And I think that the community meeting that was held maybe in October, and when the Finance Committee was asked to have a presentation at one of their meetings, I insisted that it be open and that it be, and I actually invited members of the school committee to come, and I also put a few other obstacles in the way, like I don't want to have a pre-recorded thing, so that there would be ample opportunity during the presentation to ask questions. So I think it's really, really important, if you want buy-in and you want community support, that the community has to have more options to be involved. That's all.
Yeah, and I think we're providing that, Mrs. Hurlbut. I think we're doing a number of public meetings. I think there's a number of times that it's been.
I think there's some upcoming. I think there's only been one so far.
If I could
That's
just
not true.
respond to you, there's been a few. And we're not just sitting here waiting around either.
Oh, no, I know that.
Our job here as elected officials is to reach out to people. So even though we might not live in your neighborhood, we're certainly reaching out to people in addition to making sure that this gets addressed in public hearings and in public forums. So I think that saying that there's meetings here, there, and everywhere, I don't think that's a proper characterization of it. And we did just see a presentation where there's a rollout of even more meetings.
No, I understand that they're going to be a much more.
We certainly
community
do
meetings.
want to hear the input, and as you've heard now, the input that was received by members of the public that attended is why this went back to the drawing board, some more review. And that those comments were taken and infused into this review. If this cost no money, we wouldn't even be sitting here. If we had grant funding and finances, a nice healthy cash reserve that could cover the cost, none of us would be sitting here. Everybody would be in favor of this. Let's face it. So these are tough decisions. This is difficult to forecast. It's certainly difficult to say we're going to generate the entire project cost back in year 10. We know that we can't do that. We're not magicians here, and everybody knows what is involved in the budgeting for the town and what revenue is coming in, and being realistic about that, having addressed it every year. So I don't know that saying meetings here, there, and everywhere. They're rolled out so that we can get input, and the members of the team are seeking that ardently. So I disagree with that characterization. Mr. Kelleher.
I just wanted to clarify a point for Mr. Studo, and if I was unclear, I apologize, but I wasn't looking to have anything now, and I didn't know anything about this change in interest rate. My whole point was that there are a lot of moving parts that have to be decided with respect to the project, betterments or no betterments, how much is being paid by the full town through a tax assessment, and how much is being paid by abutters. So I wasn't expecting anything from the wastewater study group tonight. So if you thought that that's what I was saying, it isn't at all. I'm not being critical of what's going on. It's just that I'm concerned about the timing, and that when we have the information that we need, when you've made your recommendations and are ready to move forward with them, that then it be modeled so that people know what it's going to cost. That was my point, and that be at some point well in advance of whenever we have a special town meeting, whether it is in April or it is at some other time. That was my point. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Gonzalez.
So I just wanted to address that I'm really happy to see the 1.5 million federal funding and the 250,000 state funding. As I understood it, we potentially can get more funding once it's voted in. Is that correct? Potentially.
What generally what needs to happen is,
Surely.
first of all, we have to approve the project and have it ready to go.
Right.
But generally speaking, in order to qualify for major grant funding, it's usually tied to a public-private partnership. In other words, some property owner here in North Reading, once we've got the project approved, ready to go, and a property owner approaches us and say, listen, I have a plan to redevelop my property or develop my property to this extent, which would address needs that the state or federal government have identified as being important from an economic development standpoint, housing standpoint, transportation standpoint. If they hit these benchmarks, you then become eligible for more grant funding.
Okay.
But again, without the project,
Without.
it's not going to happen.
Okay.
None of our projections are predicated on any additional, again, all of our projections up to this point have been no help from anybody.
No help from anybody.
So this is your worst case, most expensive prospect.
Right.
And hoping they can only get better. Again, the $1.5 million, again, I think the board should acknowledge again publicly the efforts put in by Congressman Moulton's office and Senator Markey and Senator Warren, ensuring that it stayed in the federal budget, that was just signed the last week of December. I mean, that's terrific. It's wonderful, and some of this $1.5 million can actually go towards the final design plans just for that portion up in 114, which is good. So we can spend some of that money sooner rather than later.
Take the burden.
$250,000 that Representative Jones and Senator Tarr secured for us, again, at the very end of the fiscal year with the supplemental budget that was signed by the Governor Baker. Again, that money is more readily available for us to be using sooner rather than later, and again, greatly appreciate it because it certainly helps.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, all of our scenarios are no help from anybody, and
It can only get
because
better.
of the links to the grants that are out there, it will depend. It will depend upon how we can partner with certain people that hit the bogey mark for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Britton. Mrs.
And
Gonzalez?
I just wanted to reiterate kind of what you were saying. And I'm happy to see people here, and I hope people are watching to see how this works. That yes, there are working groups, but they come back to us. They report back to us. Committees are here, involved. Committees hear what's going on. They give us feedback. Yeah, we had those public meetings who gave us feedback, which is, again, why you said it went back to the drawing board. A mistake that was made, that we heard from the public, was there was not enough outreach. People didn't know when those meetings were, where they were being held. So that has been addressed. And these meetings will be, I'm sure, much better outreach to everybody so that they know where they are, they know when they are. Nobody's trying to hide anything. We all want to be involved in this. We all want to make the right decisions. And then it comes back to all of you. You know, you come to town meeting and you vote. So, you know, I'm just happy to see you seeing this process, that nobody's making their own decisions for anything.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzalez. I mean, the productivity that the public meetings have yielded is quite obvious. I mean, I struggle with this because I know that this project would be beneficial for the town. Like I said, it's expensive and growing pains, and there's a cost tag to that, but I know it would be beneficial for the long-term financial health of the town. That to me is a matter of obviousness, but I struggle with, you know, the things like, you know, the comments that Mr. Woodlawn said, mentions, where that is, $400 is a tough nut for someone to crack. $46,000 tie-in.
Absolutely.
But I also know when we discussed previously that opt-in or, opt-out really was the model that we had reviewed. There has to be a shift of coverage of that cost if someone's not paying for it. So the how-to is really
Right.
something I'm wrestling with, and that's why I'm like Dawn, I'm Mr. Kelleher, I'm anxious to see how these models play out, even in an opt-in scenario, which I think is far better. But if there was a way to do this where we could just say, you know, buy into this without buying into it, approve it so that it can get more funding attended to it.
Right.
It won't move forward unless we get X amount of additional funding. That would be ideal. I know that's very fantasy land, especially given, you know, these little things that we receive, which are big things in the end of the budget, but it's definitely, like I said, if we had $130 million in federal funding to this, we wouldn't even be talking about this long. It would just be absolutely, let's get it done. So I am appreciative of what the public meetings have yielded in terms of a look back at this, and let's try these different ways to look at this, and I would like to see how that plays out, and see if there's any other additional funding that we could be reaching for this, to be able to offset the.
It's important to know that we've had over 400 different people attend these meetings.
Yes,
That's a significant,
that's huge.
say, bellwether of the community, or interest in the community, to give us additional feedback last fall. And again, we heard them, we're listening, we're adapting, and again, we still believe that this is a very important investment that needs to be made, that the town needs to consider, and we're gonna put it forth for their consideration, and how they decide, what they decide to do is up to them, but it's important for us to ensure that we give them the requisite amount of information to make an informed decision, and that's our goal. And continue to do it, and we're driven by the calendar somewhat. I, for one, am not going to present it too soon.
No, we appreciate
And,
that, yeah. We appreciate that. We wanna make sure we have as much detail as can be, and some actual figures and some actual numbers and some actual values and some actual, calculations, and Mr. Warner.
Can we just go to the schedule, please?
All the TBDs?
All the TBDs.
Yeah, what schedule?
All the TBDs, today's date is on there.
I'm getting stressed just thinking about it. The reality is, okay, where are we at?
The end goal is April, as we heard, so.
I mean, that just doesn't, I mean, it's from the time everybody kind of collectively here agrees to what the model is, it's gonna be 2 months. So I don't know how that gets done, and again, I don't know the state thing, I don't know what the state requirement is, but,
I think we'll be fine. with
well, I mean, so if we're in June doing this meeting, that would be fine?
that. My personal opinion?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I may be in a minority of the group, but yes.
Well, I mean,
But
that's
that's
how-
okay, but again,
That's
I'm
a,
gonna let this, to me, just let it play out the way that it plays out, and if there are consequences
Let me
associated
just-
with it, we will
let-
know.
let me just say that the reason why I asked is if we're missing an opportunity, because, I mean, I know you're working as hard as you can, but if we're missing an opportunity, April 15th really is the deadline. We gotta really, everything has to drop and we have to work on this. I mean, because there's no way,
I can tell you right now, everybody's working on it right now.
I
Anyway,
believe you, I
yeah,
believe you, but
so-
it has to go up another level if you're trying to make April 15th, because it's gonna take 2 months to get it out to the town.
Yes.
From the time, there's some agreement, and there's so many variables you got going on inside there. If I was doing this project, I'd be thinking, I'd be lucky to get it done by summer, to get it to the town.
Madam Chair?
And I just don't wanna see us,
Mr. Warner, are you
I just don't wanna see us,
Yeah.
miss an opportunity because, I mean, if I have to come in here in a week, I'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. But if I hear April 15th, if it's not April 15th, let's be realistic about what we really can get
That's
this
our
done.
goal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Studo?
So, yeah, to comment on that, Mr. Wallner, I think also what's important to realize is that in the next decision points made and how we do it, I think that's kind of the ballgame, and then you gotta go out there and see if the community wants it, based on whatever the best the select board can choose for the model. So that's why I think it's realistic, because if we go back, how's this, ready? We would be in a never-ending loop if every time the select board wants to go present something to the public, we made a tweak to it. It would never stop, right? I mean, in anything, right?
Made it what?
So I think that it's realistic, because once we present the numbers and all the feedback and the recommendation from the wastewater committee, I think that the select board we have to maybe clear the agenda on a meeting or half of it and make the decision to say, this is what we think is the best possible option for the town. And then we have all the outreaches and you know what? I will guarantee you that there's going to be things somebody doesn't like, right? It's just a nature of something this big. Just like I said a long time ago, I think that if convinced that even if, tomorrow the state we got $100 million grant, I think there's people that would vote no, right? Because I think there's people that have straight out said that it's not about money, it's about that they just don't want this in North Reading, period. So I feel that once we do the best we can, with all available information, all the feedback, and I think that the next round is gonna show that the people have spoken and a lot of feedback went in there. I think that's why I think I'm realistic on the April 15th timeline, because I don't think there's gonna be major tweaks. I don't think there can be. I think if there's a major tweak, I think that is how, certain people are gonna use the run out the clock strategy, right? You keep it in a never-ending loop, the state passes us by, oh, shucks, no rush now, thank you for playing. We don't need to rush this. Next thing you know, my son's graduating high school in 10 years. So that's why I think that, I don't think there's gonna be major changes the next time around after the select board, approves whatever we're gonna put out there. Because if we do that, like I said, Mr. Wallner, I don't think June's enough. I don't think this next December's enough. I don't think there's ever enough time. Because if you always elicit feedback, and the point of the feedback is to change what you got, you'll never finalize the plan. So, thank you.
Okay, but we're looking at a target date of within a month's time to see some of this data. If we confirm that, so that at least the select board will have a presentation about this within about a month's time. I'm sorry, Mr. Warner, you had to.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 2 months out, by February 15th, we're done. I mean, like, we've seen it, we've agreed with it, and, now it's going out to community. So February 15th, today is January 9th. That's not far.
What did you say, we wouldn't be reasonable?
I'm sorry,
No.
sir. Please,
Is that what you're
we're
saying?
trying to deliberate on
Okay.
something. No one is saying anything like that, really.
I just wanna-
We're trying to work on a timeline, that's all. All right.
I'm just stressed about it.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, I mean, just if we're
Yes, of
practical.
course, of course.
I mean, we have to accept that 2 months is needed to get it out to the community. So we need to have all the information here and agreed to and ready to go by February 15th.
Which is not an unrealistic timeline. You've heard that.
A lot of models up there. I see a lot of different models. That's going to take time to work through. You know, I'm sorry, it just is.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Percy, anything else?
He has some pretty good tools.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
That's it
Good.
from my end. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for your being here and for your presentation. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our next order of business, which is the senior plan renewal. Did I say that wrong? Did I skip over
Particular.
something?
We're doing the particular thing next.
Cowabunga.
Cowabunga.
Should be wearing these. All right. Excuse me, let's go to the next order of business. Thank you, Mrs. Hubbard, Mr. Gallagher. Which, by the way, these two have their own committees and have their own meetings too, in addition to all this, and they still come to our meetings too.
Fun.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Thank you, we have a meeting tomorrow.
Stepping on my words.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing on the common victualers license for Cowabunga's Entertainment, 271 Main Street. Come on up, join us, please. Give us your name and your address.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Matt Pearson. I'm the proprietor over at Cowabunga's Entertainment.
Welcome.
Thank you. I picked a good night.
And you're on the route,
Yeah.
so if you didn't know that already,
Right.
you're on the route.
I live in New Hampshire, so we are here for a common victualler license. We made some renovations at our facility. We had been there for 8 years now. We hadn't had a kitchen, and we are thrilled to be just about wrapped up on that endeavor. We have a new concession stand, new bathrooms, expanded play space. So we're excited about that. We just are looking to you guys for some feedback on our license request and seeing where we go from there.
I suspect there was a public hearing notice that I was supposed to read. Was there?
No required notification.
Good, all right. Okay, do my colleagues have any questions of the licensee? None?
Could the,
Oh, Mr.
just,
O'Leary.
no, just if the administration can give us an update as to where our licensing people are at and where our inspectional services are at,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
Sure. So this is a facility that has been in transition for at least months at this point, working through a variety of issues associated with the construction project. And I think we all ought to keep in mind that this was formerly a hardware store in its last iteration. And Cowabunga's has come in and put it back to productive economic use for the town, but it's involved quite a bit of work in the building over the past few years. I think the great news is that the work is coming to completion, as I understand it. There have been different twists and turns with regard to some things. The facility was closed for a while there was some work being done regarding the restrooms. There's, I think, a few loose ends that need to be tied up that relate to the certificate of occupancy, as I understand it, that he's working through with the building department. And I know there was an issue, and we are becoming all too familiar with the issue of banners and flags hanging near the ceiling. Are the banners down?
Yes.
They are down.
But
Okay.
the banners are down. Mr. Anzalone came by and made sure of that, and they're down. We're waiting for some feedback with Deputy Chief Galvin and the fire department just to make sure that what isn't allowed in regards to banners that are vinyl or banners that are paper, and having that conversation. But in the meantime, all those banners are down as an interim team. We are signless in those spots.
So my understanding is that from a regulatory standpoint, we're prepared to recommend the license be approved. There will be a separate conversation happening on the certificate of occupancy that he will work through directly with the building department.
Great.
is it, are you all set, Mr. O'Leary? Is it, but aren't you open for business now?
Correct, yes.
So is there already an,
I believe
there
there's
has
a
to be one that's issued?
I believe there's a temporary certificate of occupancy
Yeah.
that's in effect.
But was, because of the construction?
Correct.
Oh, I see, okay. So, but we could move to, if the board, if it's the board's pleasure to move to approve contingent upon the granting of, or the completion of those, right?
And you
Final
could,
steps,
you have attached conditions
Yeah.
in the past, and
Yeah.
so that is a possibility.
just to make sure that the proper occupancy gets granted for the use of the expanded, food service area, right?
The board has the discretion to do that, yes.
So, but as far as Mr. O'Leary's question, all of our local enforcement officials, inspection officials have all set with this, other than the issue with the certificate of occupancy.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Mr. Studo, any questions?
No.
All right, Mr. Wallner?
Nope.
Any questions, Mrs. Gonzalez?
Well, I work with a lot of people in town, so they're gonna wanna know what kind of food you have.
We are excited to have pizza in-house. We're excited to have all the fixings that the kids seem to enjoy. It's chicken fingers,
French fries.
French fries, slush, all that good stuff.
All the bad
healthy
stuff.
options as well. We have wraps and things like that. So a little something for everybody.
Okay.
We're excited about it.
Okay. Is there a public comment in favor or opposed?
I don't see any pending right now.
Okay, so we can close that portion of the hearing, and any further discussion by the board? Is there a motion?
Sure. And do you want me to add on about the proper occupancy permit?
Does the motion that's been prepared say subject to all regulatory?
Right.
Yes, it does. Is that enough?
Okay, I believe that will cover it.
That's
so.
Okay, all right. Madam Chair, I move to grant a common victualler license for Cowabunga's Entertainment, 271 Main Street, to expire December 31, 2023, subject to all regulatory department requirements.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Manu Pelley is aye. So, good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. It's
Much
contingent
success. Thank you
on
for investing, continuing to invest in the
Yeah.
property.
Thank you. It's hard to believe I had to do that research. It was 8 years that.
I can't believe it's been
I was
8
back
years.
here.
8 years,
Wow.
really?
Not that long.
A lot less gray hair last time I was here. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
With all those kids running around, yeah.
Next time we see him, he'll be bald.
Mr. O'Leary, Mr. Gilberto.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So we will hold the license until we resolve what's going on
Yep,
with the noise
understood.
department, but I understand is that that's not too far off.
No, yeah, we're
Okay.
pretty much right on the cusp. But
Okay.
I think Mr. Knoll will
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Appreciate everyone's.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
tonight.
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So
Good luck.
now we'll do the senior plan renewal. So that's our next order of business. All right.
Madam Chair, through you, this is a routine step that the board takes. It's a renewal of Medicare plan that is afforded for health insurance for our retirees. We received yet another favorable renewal on that plan, and there's a motion that's been included in the packet
Okay.
that Mr. Warner has.
And any questions of the members? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the retiree health insurance plan for 2023 in accordance with the attached summary.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Manu Pelley is aye. Next order of business is to review our meeting schedule. So you're probably going to have to remind us, Mr. Gilberto, what that meeting schedule is.
Sure, Madam Chair, through you, and I'm going off of page 3 in the meeting packet for this evening's meeting. We left the schedule that was proposed intact, but I recall that there is a conflict of one board member in the first or second week of March,
Yeah.
and another board member, I believe, around the
May.
first week of May.
May, yeah.
So those dates are still on there, but I recognize it was identified that there are conflicts. So we want to try to work around that. We certainly can try to do so.
All right, let's just put the next meeting scheduled for January.
The 23rd, Madam Chair.
And the meetings in February were,
The 9th and 27th? Oh,
9th?
sorry.
No, I had the 13th and the
13th and
27th.
27th, excuse me.
Yeah.
It must be a typo. 13th and 27th, yes.
Yeah.
and then it was, March that there was an issue with.
Correct. We had proposed March 11th for the Saturday budget hearing and March 13th and 27th for regular board meetings that would also include budget hearings.
Say that again, 2/13 and 2/27?
Correct.
Excuse me, 3/13.
3/11, 3/13, 3/27.
3/11?
That's a
Which is a
Saturday for the
Saturday.
budget
Oh, I
hearing.
have that on my schedule.
3/13 and 3/27.
Correct.
And then the 13th also?
Yes. And what was the conflict with that one?
Hold on, for February is.
The 6th and 27th.
No.
13th. 13th.
February 13th and February 27th.
And then the same
Okay.
for March.
March 11th for the Saturday budget meeting, March 13th and March 27th. And then we're looking to schedule for April 2, right, Mr. Gilberto?
Correct.
So two of those, again, the 11th and the 13th, I won't be available, but
Mhm.
again, that's okay. If it works for everybody else, that's all right. I'll
Mhm.
catch up on the budget reviews anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Just
Okay.
be sorry that I won't be able to partake of the muffins and scones and whatever else is going to be here, but, and coffee.
Oh, I hope
I
your
mean, I'm in it for the
summer
free coffee and free food, you know, and
I
I'm
hope
gonna
you
miss out
summer
on it.
when you're getting pancakes and French
And
toast.
Mr. Studo, you're gonna bring in some homemade something or other, or, you know?
No, hold on, no, because March 11th is a problem for me as well.
Oh, it is?
So,
Oh.
I can still have something delivered, but it ain't gonna be me.
but, hang on one second though, but are, Mr. Wallner, Mrs. Gonzalez, are you available for March
Yes.
11th?
Yes.
Yeah. So as long as we have a quorum to proceed with the budget hearings, I think we should move forward with that day.
That's usually
That's
police,
our-
fire, DPW.
Yeah, that's our public safety, right, Mr. Gilberto?
That's correct,
We're
Madam
gonna
Chair.
handle all three public safety divisions? All right.
No, sorry, 2 public safety departments, police and fire, and then the public works department. So police, fire, DPW.
Right, all three of our, that's all three of our, wait, we're missing other public safety divisions.
Correct. They will be in the Monday hearings.
The next hearings, okay.
Madam
right.
Chair, through you, does the board wish to consider the 18th, Saturday the 18th instead, at least for the Saturday hearing, which would be, I expect will be of substance, that the requests coming in will be required
That's fine
discussion?
for me.
Good. Would that work for you, Mr. O'Leary?
Yes.
Does that not work for you, Madam Chair?
No, I mean, I don't know, but I'm gonna do my best. I just wanna make sure that as long as there's a quorum on one of those days, we can move forward. We're not gonna be able to capture everybody at every meeting, especially Saturday.
On a
meetings
Saturday, right?
Yeah,
with
I understand.
people's weekend commitments, me included, so. But
I leave it to-
I did put the 11th in, if that's okay. And Mr. O'Leary had already said something, Mr. Studo has a conflict. If that's okay with the two of you, barring
But-
any
But if we
unforeseen.
can get 4 on the 18th, 4 members instead of 3.
Oh, all right, well, who's the 4?
I think-
Us 4?
Vincenzo, you all right on the 18th?
I think Vincenzo, Mr.
Oh, you're not?
Mr. Studo has an issue with that Saturday, because the Saturdays.
Saturdays in general?
Yeah, but then I
Saturday, well, the 11th specific, the other Saturdays, is just, I mean, yeah, it's just a tough day for, obvious reasons.
All right, so it's up to the board if you want, would you prefer the 18th? Because we could put it on the 18th if you have that available.
It doesn't matter either one.
If you want, I can.
No, keep it the 11th if you want.
Mr. Gilberto, have you already notified those divisions or?
I have notified them tentatively.
So do you think that would be okay to ship it to the 18th?
Well, stick with the 11th.
I don't know that for certain.
I'm gonna pencil in both and whatever we decide is fine with me.
So-
Stick with the 11th again. I thought Mr. Studo was okay for the 18th, so, but 3 here or 3 there, doesn't matter.
Let's just stick with the 11th.
Yeah, stick with the 11th.
Preferably the preferably the 18th, but if not, we're gonna do the 11th. Not preferably the
Yeah.
18th.
Other way
I think,
around.
I think I heard not
Other way
preferably,
around.
yes. Preferably the 11th, if not, then the 18th.
Oh,
Okay.
we're gonna hang on to the 11th, Mr. Studo, okay? If you're able to
Okay.
join, if you're not, that's okay. We know you're gonna read up and catch up, and we'll have other discussions with on the budget at our other regular meetings that you'll be at, so. And then I think if you did have any specific questions about the individual budgets, you could just send them to the TA, and he can present them during those meetings, and that'll be fine. All right.
Okay, thank you.
And now we're trying to figure out April, so, and then being realistic about if we're tying this deadline of the special town meeting, we have to back into that with some, board meetings in advance to issue warrants, et cetera. Is the expectation that that'll be done in March?
We generally have had, so yes, the board would be asked to sign the warrant roughly 4 weeks ahead of whatever date is selected. So that would put us around the second week of March for such approval to take place, with a warrant article hearing taking place most likely 2 weeks or a week before the town meeting date itself, so probably early April.
And you're talking about the 15th as the special?
No later than the 15th. That's a Saturday, I think, so it probably would be, or, if we were to go by the way we normally operate, it would be I guess it's the 9th, probably, or 10th, it would be the 10th, if we were to go with that date,
The Monday night, the
No.
10th.
Monday the 10th.
Isn't that am I wrong if isn't that a holiday?
The 17th is a holiday,
Sunday.
yes.
It's- The 9th is Easter, so it's Easter Monday.
Oh, the 9th
How's
is
that,
Easter.
Monday?
Is that an official holiday?
No.
No.
And the 17th is
Correct.
so that's true, that is a holiday. Okay,
Well, that's April
so.
vacation.
It is.
The 17th. All right, so backing into that, you're proposing meetings on what days in April?
The 10th and the 24th. So if we were to say that we're penciling the 10th as a town meeting date, I would suggest moving the board meeting date to the 3rd, if we're able to.
You can make
I'm
that
sorry.
determination later.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused, I'm sorry.
I'm confusing you, that's why, I'm sorry.
When we just discussed the TBD schedule, we were talking about a special town meeting on April 15th.
By the 15th.
No
By the
later than the
15th,
15th.
not on the
I don't even
15th.
know what day of the week that is. That's a
That's a
Saturday.
Saturday.
That is a Saturday, yeah.
So, am I mistaken that when are we proposing to have a special?
So we did not, in the schedule that you were presented, propose an actual date. And the purpose, and the reason was because of the fact that we're looking for this feedback. We were asked what the deadline was, and we provided it. We said it should be no later than April 15th if we plan to bid our portion of the project with the state. If we're going to have a town meeting on a Saturday, it could be that 15th. If we're going to do it on the customary Monday, it would be
The
April
10th.
10th.
Okay, so,
So,
It'd have to be on the 10th, because most people are going to be gone during April vacation, right? So,
I wouldn't recommend it that Saturday, but that's.
what's that?
I would not recommend the town meeting on that Saturday. I was asked to provide a date.
No, on
deadline,
the
and I
Monday,
provided
I'm
it.
saying it would have to be on the 10th.
That's
which
when
is
we
the
would
Monday.
logically have it if we were to
Yeah.
follow our practice.
Because
yes.
people are going to be gone, during,
but why didn't we say that when we were having this discussion and going over the dates? I mean, by the 15th is something totally different than we're gonna have it on the 10th. That's two totally different things.
Again, it's the board's pleasure for the date
That
that it's
means
gonna
by
happen.
the 10th, not by the 15th. So,
we just lost 6 days.
Again, we didn't pick a date for the meeting coming into tonight.
I
tried to-
understand that, because we're working on the schedule, but I think,
so we should probably schedule the 3rd on our schedules.
If we want to circle the 10th as a town meeting date, then yes.
Okay. And then we're saying the 3rd for a select board meeting.
Yeah,
the 3rd, the
yeah.
10th.
And
And then
then
our-
a special town
24th.
meeting on the 10th.
The 3rd is a board meeting, the 10th is a special town meeting.
So we're just gonna come the whole month of April to town hall on Monday.
You get school vacation week off.
Okay.
Not the week of the 17th, which is a holiday anyway, and then our
Correct.
next meeting, what, would be the 24th,
Correct.
April 24th.
Wow. Thanks, Deb.
And Mr. O'Leary's very busy time. Tax time.
Oh, yeah, that
You
thing.
don't have to sleep, it's all right.
Just pile it upon,
That's
that's
it.
it, pile it on there. All right, how about May? Do we want to go into May, or do we want
Yeah.
to wait till we see how we do getting through the month of April and decide?
Well, we
You
had
want to pick a couple of days in May while we're
penciled
on
in
here?
on the 22nd, right?
We had proposed dates, but I know there
Well,
was
the-
at least one conflict.
The 3rd is the reorg, right?
I had written, customarily, that's when it would be, yes.
Yeah.
Wednesday the
So
3rd.
I have that and I'm fine with that. I wasn't sure before, but I can do that.
All right.
But I
And then-
could not do the 8th. Was that the one?
But is everyone else available on the 8th to meet? And
I
then-
could do the 8th, or I can do the, yeah, the 8th is fine for me, but
I mean, we'll forgive you for missing one meeting out of
Out of
hundreds, you know.
How many?
so
Yeah, I think it would be the first one I do.
5, 8, I know, really. 5, 8, and then the 22nd? What?
Yep.
5/22nd?
Yes.
All right.
And that would be the informational hearing, presumably for the June spring annual town meeting.
Okay. And that gives us enough time to do all the publication and posting and,
The plan would be to sign the warrant for the town meeting on May 8th,
okay.
have the hearing 2 weeks later, and presumably have the town meeting either on June 5th or June 12th. You'll have a separate hearing for that as required under the charter to determine that date. But it will likely be either the 5th or 12th, is my
All
guess.
right. So May 3rd is the reorg, May 8th, May 22nd, and either June 5th or June
12th.
12th for the town meeting, the annual town meeting.
Again, that's subject to a separate hearing.
Okay. All right,
Okay?
then all bets are off for July and August. We'll figure that out in May and June, all right? As our social directors define our calendars for us, as Mr. O'Leary's said.
This is all subject to her approval.
Yeah. Okay,
so not to be a Debbie Downer, but I see,
But,
you know, the 23rd and the 13th are the next 2 meetings before we'd have to have the sewer thing locked up, if you're gonna do 2 months at a time.
say that again,
We'd only have 2 meetings between now and if we're saying that, the select board needs to kind of, you know, bless, I guess, whatever plan is coming out for the sewer. We only have 2 meetings to do that. We have the 23rd and then we have the 13th. And on the 13th, it has to be separate.
That's our goal. And again,
Okay.
don't be surprised if it slips.
I just keep hearing this.
I know.
I'm confused by the April 15th requirement.
I know.
Okay, anyways. I mean, we might have to slip something else in there. I mean, we might have to slip an extra meeting in.
true,
accomplish it.
flexibility would be in order for this, because
Yeah.
it's a pretty significant
Yeah.
impact. It's hard enough for us to lock in, which is why Mr. Gilberto's having us do this now. Mr. Gilberto, can you back us into the publication and warrant requirements for a special town meeting on April 10th? So at what point are we gonna have our warrant informational hearing? At what point are we gonna sign that special town meeting warrant? At what point does it have to be published? How much time do you need in advance to get it to the printer, to get it to the voters?
If we were to use April 10th as that special town meeting date, I would envision the board being asked to sign the warrant on March 13th. That's roughly 4 weeks' notice. And to hold an informational hearing either on the 27th of March or on the 3rd of April. And we would be notifying through the newspaper 2 weeks before the town meeting date, so that would be the weeks of March 27th and April 3rd. But April 10th for a town meeting date backs you up to March 13th to sign a warrant.
So we really have 3 meetings, the next 3 meetings to,
We have 2, because we're saying 2 months to get the word out to the public. Should start on February, you know, what I mean, to really get it out there, on February 14th, you're doing meetings.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm just, if you want to have 2
This is
months.
yeah,
here.
yes,
Yeah.
you're right, yeah.
It's going to be a lot of discussion. I mean, there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of discussion. We're going to
Okay.
have big audiences.
All right,
And it'd be nice to imagine that what we come up with is going to be
Well, they're gonna have to bring boxes of chocolate.
perfectly accepted, but, there'll be a back and forth. Of course, there'll be back and forth.
Mhm.
So we're going to have to, anyways, it's
okay,
tight schedule.
It is, but
okay.
I'm looking at confidence over here.
All right, are we all set, Mr. Studo, all set with that schedule?
Yeah.
Okay, next order of business is the minutes. We've got a pretty significant pile of minutes that we've now all had the opportunity to take a look at. So do we have a motion?
Yeah.
To approve the minutes.
Okay, so we're going to do regular sessions first. So, Madam Chair, I move to approve the regular session minutes as written for the following dates: December 6, 2021, December 2021, January 10th, 2022, April 11th, 2022, April 25th, 2022, May 4th, 2022, May 9th, 2022, June 1st, 2022, June 6th, 2022, June 13th, 2022, July 11th, 2022, and August 8th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Manu Pelley is aye.
Okay, and now we're going to do, Madam Chair, I move to approve the executive session minutes as written for the following dates: December 6, 2021, December 20, 2021, January 10th, 2022, April 11th, 2022, April 25th, 2022, May 9th, 2022, June 1st, 2022, June 13th, 2022, July 11th, 2022, August 8th, 2022, and August 23rd, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Manu Pelley is aye.
So we're going to do the executive session. Is this the time to do the executive session ones now? Okay.
Yep, take a vote on that.
So, Madam Chair, I move to not release the following executive session meeting minutes by exercising the following exemptions. And then I'm going to read through a long list of dates of the meetings, what their purpose was of the meeting, and then what the exemption is, because we have privileged information that doesn't necessarily go out to the public. Starting with 11/1/2021, Section 2, purpose was Section 2, non-union. Section 3, NRAS. The exemption is ongoing collective bargaining. 11/22/2021, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, opioid litigation and NRAS, ongoing collective bargaining and litigation. 12/6/2021, Section 3, secondary school building litigation and NRAS, due to ongoing collective bargaining and attorney-client privileged. 12/2021, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, firefighters, secondary school building litigation, 20 Elm Street. Ongoing collective bargaining, litigation, attorney-client privileged. 1/10/2022, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, secondary school building litigation, 20 Elm Street, police, Section 6, property, ongoing collective bargaining, litigation, property valuation. 1/24/2022, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, police, 20 Elm Street, ongoing collective bargaining and litigation. 2/7/2022, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, DPW library, ongoing collective bargaining. 2/28/2022, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, 20 Elm Street, Section 6, property, ongoing litigation, property valuation. 3/14/2022, Section 2, non-union. Section 3, ongoing collective bargaining. 3/28/2022, Section 3, firefighters, health insurance, ongoing collective bargaining. 4/11/2022, Section 3, health insurance, police, ongoing collective bargaining. 4/25/2022, Section 3, 20 Elm Street, ongoing litigation, property valuation. 5/9/2022, Section 2, non-union, ongoing collective bargaining. 6/1/2022, Section 2, non-union, Section 3, litigation, ongoing collective bargaining. 6/21/2022, Section 2, non-union, Section 3, collective bargaining, ongoing collective bargaining. 7/11/2022, Section 2, non-union, Section 3, collective bargaining, ongoing collective bargaining. 8/8/2022, Section 2, non-union, Section 3, secondary school building project, attorney-client. 8/23/2022, Section 3, secondary school building project, attorney-client. 9/7/2022, Section 3, police lieutenants, secondary school building litigation, ongoing collective bargaining, attorney-client privileged. 9/16/2022, Section 3, secondary school building project and attorney-client. 9/28/2022, Section 3, library, secondary school building project, ongoing collective bargaining, attorney-client privilege. 10/3/2022, Section 3, secondary school building project, attorney-client. 11/21/2022, Section 3, DPW, ongoing collective bargaining. 12/19/2022, Section 3, firefighters, ongoing collective bargaining.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Manu Pelley is aye. Okay, next order of business is legal bills.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move to approve legal bills for November 2022 in the amount of $3,832.61 as follows. General, $2,662.61. Labor, $1,170 for a total of $3,832.61.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Manu Pelley is aye.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move to approve the response to Mr. Austin dated December 22nd, 2022.
Next order of business, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
That was it for legal bills. Is the review of 2 open meeting law complaints. I'm sorry, Mr. Gilberto, if you could just give the rundown on those 2.
Certainly, Madam Chair, through you, we did receive a couple of related things. First, request for copies of meeting minutes, some of which were executive session minutes, and I think you described very well at the beginning that we needed to follow a process for that, and we've reviewed that in the motion that was voted earlier with regard to that process on those minutes. There was a request also for minutes dated, that was dated December 22nd. The requestor noted and filed it in the form of a complaint for failure to respond to that in a timely fashion, and I've since tried to provide what was available, and now we'll provide more that it's been approved. So this is a written response as required under the law, but it relates to the previous action of the vote, and it also calls for a further follow-up from my office with regard to the nature of the executive session request, which we'll work with counsel on as well.
So the nature of the 2 open meeting law complaints, the claims that were made involve the minutes, the failure to release the minutes?
Approval of the minutes, and then a request for review and release of executive session minutes. There's also, and I noted it in the response, a request for proper documentation of any mention of deliberations of the wastewater working group, which, to the extent there was discussion, is accounted for in the minutes that have been approved.
Okay, so because we all got the copies from in the packet, and it's our obligation under the law to discuss those, and then to address how we're going to proceed with responding to those. So to the extent that we would be issuing a written response to those complaints, to the complaining, correct, Mr. Gilbert?
There is a draft letter that's referred to in the motion that's been prepared for your signature, but the letter references follow-up with regard to providing the documents that were requested. So for example, I've committed previously to provide the approved versions of the minutes. I've given them in draft at this point.
Right, we
Now
did
they'll
see
approve.
that, yes.
Those will be sent, and then also responding on the executive session portion of it as well, with regard to the privilege that's been exercised.
All right, because even though the board, you know, even though we took a vote this evening and Mr. Austin's here, we still have to produce a written response of that action that was taken, so.
Correct.
That, I just wanna make sure, we have it in our packet, we've received them, we've read through them, but we have to also, as a board, discuss it. And I don't know if there's any other questions or deliberation or discussion by my colleagues. Mr. Studo, anything further?
No.
Mr. O'Leary?
No,
You're
other
all
than certainly within his rights to request, then we'll meet our obligations to produce whatever information is available.
set? Okay. Mr. Wallner?
I'm good, thank you.
And Ms. Gonzalez, any other discussion or?
No.
Okay, then so do we have a motion?
Yes. Sorry, I raced right in. I was doing my
I thought you were
marathon
gonna give me
reading.
some more legal
Just wanted to
bills,
keep reading, that's all. Madam Chair, I move to approve the response to Mr. Austin dated December 22nd, 2022 and January 2nd, 2023, and to authorize the chair to sign the response letter.
Second?
Okay, motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Manu Pelley is aye. Now, our next order of business is the town administrator's report.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, you just bear with me one moment
No
while I find my
problem.
place here. Madam Chair, through you, I did provide copies of information that was reviewed at a recent financial planning team meeting concerning our revenue to date and a first draft of the fiscal year 2024 revenue and expense plan. Residents, I remind them, and I know there was a statement that I made at the December meeting regarding the pickup being January 7th. In fact, Christmas tree collection will occur on Saturday, January 14th. That's this coming Saturday. Trees should be curbside by 6:30 a.m. They should be free of decorations and not in bags. Residents are reminded that the town now requires the use of overflow bags for trash in excess of 2 50-gallon barrels. Bags may be purchased from the following stores: Christopher's, Ryers, CVS, Moynihan Lumber, and Reading Lumber. We are working towards a notification to sort of implement that more stringent enforcement. We've tried to educate in recent weeks with regard to this, but that exercise, with the passage of the very busy holiday season, will be stepped up in the coming weeks. So I just ask residents, if you haven't done it yet, please visit one of those locations to obtain your overflow bags if you anticipate having any trash in excess of the 2 50-gallon barrel limit. And then finally, in response to the board's request discussed at the last meeting, I spoke with the Superintendent Director of the Northeast Metropolitan Regional Vocational School District. Superintendent informed me that they are working on a presentation to update communities on the construction project, including the issue of disability access. He committed to forward us a copy of the presentation once it's complete, and in the meantime provided me the attached information from the district website, which I included in the TA's report. It's pretty lengthy. He's also happy to host a representative of the Commission on Disabilities should they wish to learn more about the project.
I think, was the request for them to come and talk with us here, though? Wasn't that the request Mr. Wallner had made?
Yeah, I thought we were gonna have Judy Diamond come, she's our representative.
Is a representative gonna explain that? Because it looked like the whole issue was accessibility going up that steep hill with a stairway. So is there anything in what they sent that addresses that, and are they gonna come and talk about that?
So in my conversation, the response was to provide the information rather than to jump up and attend the meeting. I know I did not speak directly with Ms. Diamond. I spoke with the Superintendent Director, although I did email both of them. I believe Mr. O'Leary had, as liaison, had some conversation with Ms. Diamond as well.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Early,
no,
I apologize.
The next day, I called representative to the vocational school committee, Mrs. Diamond. Maybe I misunderstood. I didn't believe that there was a request for her to come before us at this meeting yet. I thought it was gonna be, reach out, see what the information was that they had provided, what's their response to the concerns in relation to disability, disabled people in the layout of the plan. I did not convey the message that we were expecting her to attend here, so, because that wasn't my understanding.
I'm sorry, I must have been.
No,
No, that-
Maybe it
That
was,
was
but
that was our
maybe,
understanding.
okay,
That was
Yeah,
supposed
that's-
to
my
Oh,
misunderstanding,
that's
so
what I
I'll take
thought.
responsibility
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
But my conversation with her was, the concerns were raised, Mr. Waller got some correspondence from a group that had some concerns in relation to the layout of the proposed plan, location, disability-wise, how's it being handled. She assured me that it's going through all the proper channels in relation to state oversight, disability board oversight, again, local Wakefield, local requirements are being met, just as it was with our project here, Secondary School Building Committee. She's well aware as to the concerns that have been raised in addition to the disability concerns, but also the environmental concerns. She said that the committee has been addressing that, they're addressing it on their website, they're further addressing it. They have not gotten into going to all 12 communities to respond to this group, which seems to be focused primarily just in the town of Wakefield. The meetings are open, they've had some people come to their meetings. I don't think it was their plan to go each and every community to address the concerns of this group, which is primarily focused in the town of Wakefield. Again, I did not request her presence to be here because that wasn't my understanding. I'll take responsibility for that. I asked her to please pass on the information I was giving her to Superintendent DeBarry, which I know she did. So he had been alerted to concerns that were raised and the correspondence that we received prior to the town administrator getting hold of him, so it's a good thing. They had conversations. He's forwarded us some information. I don't believe it's the policy as of yet to go around to all 12 communities, because not all the concerns have been raised in all 12 communities. But again, she's quite confident, and as is Superintendent Barry, that from meeting the needs of the disabled, that the current plan is proposed more than adequately addresses those issues. And again, topographically, obviously, there's some issues, just as there are with our own school, but that's all I have to say. So I did not request her presence to be here. That was my misunderstanding.
Okay, I would say the packet that I have is a lot of their response with blank pages. So I think from what we saw as a design, and the issues really just show the design and show the accessibility to the school. That's really the bottom line. I think that was really the concern raised. So, I mean, we have an accessible school. We don't have a stairway leading up to the school. I mean, we have an entryway with accessible doorways on actually all the sides of the school.
No, but from our athletic fields, I mean, it's the topography. I don't think that's while the sidewalks may be ADA compliant from a width standpoint, it certainly would be challenging for someone to go from the lower fields all the way up that driveway, which was probably
You would have to be driven
3/8 of a mile,
Right.
you know?
It would have to be an accommodation.
Right.
This looked like
I know, but there was also,
their entryway is now located above a staircase. So that was my understanding of the question that was presented.
I think it's from a functional standpoint, but not necessarily a handicap accessibility standpoint. It's more than handicap accessible. They certainly would be able to design a building, get state funding for it, and get approval if it wasn't going to. Anyway.
Well, we shouldn't even be guessing though, Mr. Wood. We should just see what they're doing to address it, that's all.
I get it. I don't know what was presented to
I
us.
have lots of blank pages in that, I know it's a
Well,
lot,
there's
but
the scanning
most,
process.
most of mine are blank.
Some of mine are overlapped too.
It's printed from their website. I was given a link and told this is the information, so we printed it to the best that we could to make it available in advance of further presentation. But I'm happy to relay a follow-up message as well.
Okay,
Go ahead.
all right, so, sitting here, calming myself down. That group, and they're actually on Lee Farrington and Eleanor Axelrod, they came to us to the Commission on Disability, and Nikki is a member right there, sitting there, is that they came to us to tell us that one of the concerns they had was accessibility because of the serpentine path that goes up inside. That was one of the things. Now, since that time, there's been more information that's been brought forward. So in your packet, you got a supplementary packet today that outlined the things. Now, if you don't have it, I have a hard copy right here. Happy to share with you.
Yeah, I would like to see that, because mine is basically all blank pages and a picture at the end.
Yeah, so I mean, what you saw from in the original packet was the superintendent's response to what's going on. Of course, there's always two sides to every story. Their goal is to get it done, and they're planning to start breaking ground in March. So if you start reading through this, you start seeing that, Doran Whittier, who we know, actually did a pre-feasibility study, and they rejected the Hilltop site because it was functionally compromised and financially untenable. Because you have to spend about $35 million just to blast through the granite to set up a proper site for it. So then they went to someone else to get it done. And that's where they have their new plan from now. So there's issues of environmental, there's issues of, the blasting, of potentially cost overruns. There's the questions of the accessibility. There's a question of the serpentine path going up. There's a number of questions on here that are concerning. Now, this hasn't been just this solo group has made these complaints. This has been written up in the Boston Globe. And then there's been other people who have jumped in. There's a architect named Brian Thompson, who is registered with our Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And, again, this was in the packet, happy to share this with you. He writes up a whole, 2-page, thing about how this project is flawed, and it's really like we're making a huge mistake to go forward with this without further review. And, this is not a lightweight person. This is a smart person who's making these comments. And so, there's noise around this project. And then it even went further. Today I got a thing from the City of Melrose Commission on Disability where they basically say, yeah, you may be meeting state standards, but it's not even close to being acceptable as far as, being accessible to the people that are coming here. So the point is that I'm not an expert at this kind of stuff. They want to get it done. They're planning to start blasting March. We're running out of time. This group has some very reasonable complaints. We need to have Judy Diamond in front of us to be able to explain this. How do we have this much disparity, and how come we weren't informed about this? How much is the town spending? What would we commit to? $35 million? Is that our commitment over 20 years towards a project? Yes. This is a 50, 60 year plus project. We're investing millions and millions of dollars, and it appears to me that there's a lot of noise around this. Is everything the grassroots group is saying correct? Maybe not. Is everything that I read in the superintendent response correct? I know some of that stuff was not correct, but there's a problem here, and I don't think we should be ignoring it or avoiding it. I think we have to get on it, and we have to get Judy in here or whatever it takes to take some of this seriously and go through the issues, because I think we're kind of a little out of touch with what's going on. And I hate to think that we're spending money on something that ultimately is going to be a flawed project, or it's going to have a lot of pushback from people. One of the big things we just learned was that it was supposed to be on their lower field, but apparently now Wakefield has made a deal to put in a hockey rink into the very place where they were going to put it originally. And so now there's an extra conflict of interest of are we building a school, are we building a hockey rink? So it's complicated. And so what I'm asking for is support from the board to do something to address this before they start blasting away and we end up in a situation we don't want to be.
I just have a question. I'm just reading this very quickly, but is this letter seems to be more concerned about the environmental part of it than the,
Yeah, there's a lot of concerns coming from a lot of different parts, yeah.
okay.
It's
So
not
this
it's not
isn't
just
a-
ADA stuff.
Okay.
There's environmental, there's like, you're ripping down historic woods. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
Native
issues.
American.
And you'd have to read the packet, I mean, to go all the way through. But
I
there's a
did,
number of
I
issues.
read it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the concern,
All right.
and that's what,
I just think we need to elicit the plan that shows accessibility. I would have to imagine any architect or designer worth his or her salt is gonna design something that has environmental considerations in mind, but I'm not, saying that what this is saying is inaccurate, but we need to, the question I think that was presented was that picture, is that accurate? That didn't, unless someone drew it or
no, that was an
created it.
accurate picture. That was an
Yeah,
accurate
we need
picture.
to know what they're doing this is going to be newly constructed. I would wanna hear from if it's not the representative, certainly someone else on their building committee that's involved with the design phase of it, because it doesn't seem right that they would be making a once accessible building non-accessible or limiting accessibility. So I think that was really the primary focus in the last discussion on this, and I don't have the best memory, but I do recall us expecting to see someone in on that. So.
Okay, I apologize for that.
No, don't worry about it. There's no blames here,
Yeah.
but we should hear from somebody that has knowledge of the project to confirm.
I
The
do
superintendent,
have another question about this
Oh, I'm
letter.
sorry, Mrs. Gonzalez. I apologize, Mrs. Gonzalez.
And like I said, I scanned this very quickly, but from what I'm getting, he is saying that the project completely changed the actual site of the product?
Yeah.
Project completely changed
It was.
after the vote
I
was taken?
there's been, they've been it appears to be, they've been negligent in getting the word out to people. And so there was a change in site from what was originally planned to what is now being done without a lot of forward communication. And when you have, 12, 13 towns involved in this, it's easy to have that happen. Because
Who's the project
who's reporting to
manager?
us, right? I mean, who's reporting to us in
PMA.
the changes?
Who's the project manager?
PMA.
PMA is the project
It
manager.
was D&W, but they,
No, they were initially, but they didn't get the award for the architectural design
they
contract.
didn't get it because they said it was a flawed concept to put it on the hilltop. And so they went with someone else who would put it on the hilltop.
Okay, so next step,
So what did, Superintendent Barry said that he would be more than willing to meet with members of the Commission on Disability.
He responded with the information that I provided and indicated that they would be happy to meet with or host members from the Disability Commission to go over the issues associated with the site.
That's one issue of many issues.
I'm reporting the response.
Yeah, I understand his response, and I think it's a lame response, frankly.
the issues associated with the site in terms of it not being accessible? Do you understand?
That was the issue that was brought forth at our last
That was the
meeting.
original issue.
That was the original
Yes.
issue, so there wasn't
Yeah.
anything else about that was the original issue. So he's offered to
So
address
there
that
must
issue
be a
with the Commission on
heightened focus.
Disability.
But it's
There
not,
must be a
it's not
heightened
just,
focus then on making it accessible. So therefore, we should see what the plan is for making it accessible where they are now locating it on a site that accessibility is an issue. So this would be, I'm sure they have answers to what they're going to do to address that. So that's what we need.
Can I,
Oh,
Can I make a comment?
Mr. Studo. Sure, why don't you join in?
I will. So, no, I see a lot of the concerns. The one thing I don't like of this though, you go to page 4, the bottom, right? Because again, everything's motivation. That whole paragraph about Chelsea, Rivera, Saugus, Malden being the biggest payers, and 2 of those communities were the ones that didn't want it. I can tell you that good criticisms and feedback get killed if the other side starts digging and they can prove that this is really just all about the money by communities that got outvoted by the other 12. So,
I believe Chelsea was the only one that
our-
voted no. Chelsea and Malden? No, Malden voted for it. I think it was just Chelsea was one.
Saugus and Chelsea, I believe, were the 2 that
Yeah, I
voted
think
no.
Saugus
They
voted
no.
no.
Yeah.
But again, right, I'm just saying that if I'm a board member in the other communities, right, there's 14 total or 13, I'm sorry.
12, it says 12.
12, excuse me, 12. Again, if you're big proponents of it and you don't share our concerns, you're gonna point to this and say, oh, well, is it really about the environment and the accessibility, or is it really about the fact that this is just, again, another way for communities that never maybe really wanted it to try to change or divert or slow down, you know what I mean?
No,
I'm playing
the
devil's
funding's
advocate
been-
because, you know, it usually comes down to the money. I just don't want that we have real concerns here, and then we find out that, you know, it just, that paragraph right there, now, to me, in 2023 now, America, tells me that, well, money's a big component of this, like, complaint letter, and like, I don't know, I don't like it, but I'm only 1 of 5, as we like to say, and I think that, you know, look at this. I mean, you're talking about the money, then you're talking about, you know, you're pretty much going after the hockey-playing residents of Wakefield. I mean, that, you're gonna turn a lot of people off with that, including in this community, like a lot,
But
like a lot.
Mr. Studo, the ballot vote that the school invoked under the special act legislation, it didn't exclude member community. That process itself, I have a question on that, but that ship has sailed. But that ballot vote, as long as the majority of the member communities approved it, they're all in to be able to fund it. So whether the community said yes or no, they're all going to be responsible for funding it. But this letter was written by Wakefield, which approved it in the vote. So it has nothing to do with that. It's, the bottom line issue is accessibility, and they're rendering it limited in accessibility. This is an easy issue for us to get a clarity from.
Well, but what I'm trying to say though, right, again, it's that we always say what we do here, we answer to the voters. I, full disclosure, have no kids that play hockey, and I hope they never do, because it would just screw up my scheme. I will tell you this, that this one line here, considering North Reading's community over the years, and especially under a certain age, okay, that aside from Wakefield's hockey-playing residents that unclear who will benefit from a hockey rink, you can't have that line. You're being, that's a menacing line. Like, that's, I'm not putting my name on anything that attacks a certain segment of a younger demographic of the town. No way.
I'm not sure what you're reading. I don't know what you're reading, but
Page, what do you mean? Go to page 4.
of this handout, is this of this handout?
Yes, of the,
This one here.
Northeast Metro Tech Vocational School Project Common Sense Location
Okay,
Summary.
but, okay, so again, they're already moving forward in design phase. They've got their consultants, PMA and whoever else they hired, that modified the plan after the vote, so they're probably
No,
well into that plan.
Yeah, it's out to bid, it's out to bid, Gilbay's the
Right,
construction.
they're not gonna change that, and,
I'm,
but what we need to hear from our representative or whoever over there came before us and presented a plan to us, is how to make it accessible. Welcome to 2023.
Yep.
You must be inclusive and everybody has to be able to access the building. Wherever you
Oh,
decide,
wow.
if you put it on the top of a mountain, you're gonna have to make it accessible so that everybody has the opportunity for a technician education, period. That's the bottom line.
but you can massage that, Chair Kate, you can massage that paragraph, you don't have to say it like that.
I'm not
That's
even
like saying
looking
that-
at this. I'm not even paying attention to this. I'm hearkening back to the picture that we received at our last meeting, when we wanted to hear,
I don't
what
think
are
he
you
saw
doing?
that, he wasn't here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vincenzo, that's right. You, Mr. Studo, we saw a picture of how the school is gonna be accessed.
Yeah, he didn't
You
see
gotta
that.
be-
Stay away to
You
heaven.
gotta be better than that. Even in the ancient ruins in Greece, they have a
Well,
lift
I'm not
that makes it
disagreeing.
accessible to people.
I'm
They have
not-
an
I'm not
exterior
disagreeing.
lift.
I'm not disagreeing. with
That's
that.
all we
What
need
I'm
though,
saying-
Mr. Studo, is an explanation, not a pile of blank pages in a, here, look on our website. No, tell us what you're doing. Welcome to
I'm not
2023. How did your designers make it accessible to everyone so that everyone has the same ability to access the education there?
I'm not disagreeing with
So
that. I'm not
disregard
disagreeing.
this, but we need to hear back from them. That's the bottom line.
This, I would ask the board, and then I'll be quiet about this. Put yourself in your shoes, and something that's important to a lot of people that are part of your community. And if they said that that's the reason why this whole plan sucks, you would take offense as well. So if tomorrow, they replace the hockey rink, for example, Chair Kate, not to pick on you, that because of a future theater stadium studio that Wakefield wants to do, we're gonna make people hike up 100 stone like we're in the Amalfi Coast. You'd say, okay, I understand, we gotta make it more accessible, but you gotta like attack indirectly a whole like segment of a community activity group. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I didn't even look at that, okay? I'm not even looking at this. I'm just, I was expecting to see, here's a rendering. What you saw was not accurate. And here's how the project is designed for accessibility. Or even like Mr. O'Leary said, like our school. I mean, we're familiar with it, but someone would respond back and say, here's how we're addressing that issue, so that someone doesn't have to hike up, 150 stairs to get to the school, rendering it really impossible if someone needs a different, accessibility to it. So that's really the bottom line. Just set this aside, Mr. Studo, because you weren't at that meeting, but we saw a plan, and that's really what caused this whole discussion to begin with. All right, so.
I will attempt to do that, and I'll just ignore a page and a half of pretty much a long rant about how there's this conspiracy theory about a hockey rink that's causing it.
All right, and Mr. Studo, set that aside and look at what was presented in our packet. That's all you need to rely on, is what's presented. And it's a non-response, and it's not acceptable, just not acceptable. So we need to have
Sorry.
some concrete answers to
So he gets
this
that
very
visual.
simple question, that's all. So I'm hoping that we can reach out and maybe, unless the board disagrees with this, and now, again, I might be the minority, but if the board's in agreement with this, that's what I understood Mr. Wellner's request to be from the first. We didn't have these pages.
No, and we also didn't have any other issues, any other ancillary issues.
Yeah.
We had disability,
That's it.
disability access, which, and I understood it properly, that's what they would have been prepared to
Yes.
address this evening, not everything else that's mentioned in this grassroots organization's, this, summarization of concerns
Right,
and methodology that was used to choose this site versus that site. And
right.
so again, how deep do we want to get into the weeds
Right.
here? Do we want to find out why did you go with C3 instead of C1 and C2? Do we care about a hockey rink or do we not? If that impacted your decision and it increased the costs. And,
My personal
and you
concern
got to
was
get it
just
done
with
within
that
budget. Don't come back
accessibility.
looking for any money.
Hold on, please, let's hear from
Are you going to come back looking for more money because your costs associated with your choice changed, if it did change? Again, I'm not aware as to whether it changed or it didn't change. When they came and made a presentation to us and we went to town meeting, we presented at town meeting what was approved. I don't know if it was on top of the hill, top or down on the football field. I have no idea.
Okay, and I specifically asked, given the consultants hired, are your numbers locked and are you sure your numbers are locked? And they confirmed those numbers are
Correct.
locked.
Yep.
So if they do come back for more money and it requires a vote, that would be wrong, given the representations made. To get us to go and ask our
I
community
don't
to support.
disagree, but my question is, what is it we're requesting them to address? Is it just what initially we
The
talked about, which is the
accessibility.
ADA? Are we talking about the other issues?
The accessibility.
I think it's more than accessibility,
I think
though.
that's what I think.
It's there's more to it than that. Matter of fact, the slides I provided before that never made it to our packet described a lot of these things in detail. I just pointed out one issue. But there's many issues here that are saying the site location is really not a good site location. It's on the same property, it's just where you put it. Do you put it up on the hill or do you put it down on the level field where you already have a level field? I mean, it's really that simple. And there's evidence here that other people are concerned about it.
But the time and place to determine the location of the school isn't after the contract has been let, the determinations have been made. I can tell you right now, just from sitting on the secondary school building committee, think about the mound that's out behind us. The contract was let, the location of the building was set, and the borings were done and not done, and we were locked in to a location at a price. And as a result, people got the forested area torn down behind their homes and a giant mound put in their backyard. And a very similar situation here as a reaction to unforeseen expenses and unforeseen. So again, do we want to get into, we think you didn't cite this properly, or why did you pick here instead of there, or is it just going to be the ADA? Again, last meeting was the ADA compliance and above and beyond that, from an ADA standpoint, issue. It wasn't, I mean, I read this today, as far as the other issues associated with it. I mean, I had heard some things about it, but I mean, I actually read this in relation to the environmental issues in the forested area and the Native American sighting and all the other stuff. I read that today, but it wasn't brought up a couple weeks ago. Again, I'll call Mrs. Diamond. I'd be happy to converse with her again. But what is it we're looking to have her address specifically? Initially, if I had listened better, she would have been prepared to come in and talk about that.
It was late.
And my wife says
It's always late.
that I am going deaf, she says, so.
It's late now.
Fine.
But I mean, so what do we want her to address? And what are you looking for the superintendent to address? Do you want all the issues to be addressed?
I'm
Or do you
concerned
want
with the
the
ADA
ADA?
personally.
And is it still within budget?
I mean, Mr. Studo?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you care to weigh in on what you would like, if you would like anything to be addressed at all? Would you like to hear about the ADA issue or the accessibility?
No, I agree on the ADA issue. I didn't have to be sold on that. I mean, that's a given.
Okay.
I just think that you can, what's that saying? You get more people with honey instead of vinegar, whatever that saying is. I should use it more often. But there's a lot of good points here. I agree with a lot. those, is maybe outside of the ADA issue, some of these other issues just, not that they don't care about, but they're outweighed by having the school. When you go on, you know, again, Chair Kate, I think that there's a lot of good here. I agree with what Mr. Wallner said and a lot of how unfair this is to Chelsea, because now it just sounds like, again, this is a, you see what I'm just trying to say? Like, I just tone it down, stick to the point. Let's try to get the site moved, that's the appropriate thing to address the real environmental and ADA issues. But you know what? I'm sorry, but telling 11 other communities or however else that how it's, you know, because Chelsea is paying the most, their opinion matters the most, and it's like bad for them. It goes on and on and on, and then it's like I just, again, you lose me when you start. How blunt can I be? But outside of some of these communities, I don't know how much. I mean, like, I don't know how I'm looking out for North Reading. I really don't care what's going on in Chelsea. Like, and that's how this letter reads. It's like a big grievance. So that's what I meant.
But other than that, in other words, you want the ADA, the accessibility issue. You want to hear more on that.
Yes,
Okay.
you have to fix that. Like, that's a non-starter. I mean,
Yes.
you have to.
Yeah, and if they're gonna actually come back now and say, oops, we had to relocate it, even though we told you we were gonna locate it somewhere else, and we showed you a whole set of plans and designs on this, and oops, we changed our minds after the vote, and now we're gonna need another X millions of dollars to fix the accessibility issues on it. You know, we wanna hear that. You know, what's the budget attendant to that? And what's the expectation for the member communities contributing toward it? But Mr. O'Leary, you want them here? Don't want them here?
I don't mind having them here, but they need to be made aware as to what they're being asked to address.
Well,
Again, they have a
we're trying
site.
to pull the members.
Okay, but they have
Yeah.
a site, they have a budget, they have an approved budget, they have a contract let, they're starting construction, the plans are drawn for a location. Are our expectations that those are gonna change, or are we just gonna say, maybe you could have made a better choice somewhere else, and I'm sorry we didn't get into it sooner, because I wasn't aware? Maybe I would have had an opinion earlier if I knew about the different choices, but again, we have elected representatives to be there, they have this building committee, they've got a community, a host community that's gonna weigh in heavily, that I assumed all happened, and then, if concerns are being raised because of the accessibility issues, sure, allay our concerns and tell us how you're addressing them. Am I asking them to relocate the building at this late stage of the game? They will definitely come back for more money. They would have to. But anyway, sure, I have no problem having them address the accessibility issue and how it's being addressed appropriately and above and beyond what the minimum requirements are of the MGL, whatever, Sure. But the rest of it, I have major concerns in relation to an expo. I don't know what my expectations would be to have them change into the actual location of everything that's already gone out to contract, out to bid.
Mr. Wallner, I know you wanted all of this to be addressed. But I don't even have to ask what your opinion is.
Yeah, I do. I think if you just focus on one thing, you're whitewashing it. Why even bother bringing them in?
Because
There's not just one community. We're not the only community that's concerned about this.
I don't mind if they want to,
Again.
I don't mind if they want to address, why they chose this site over that site and what the benefits of that is, go ahead, knock yourself out. Inform us, because that would make us better informed as to your rationale. Whether we agree with your rationale or not, that's another story, but at least we would understand that. If they want to address that, again, that shouldn't take a lot of time. It shouldn't be a debate. It should be, this is why this location was chosen over this one and this one.
Yeah.
And as far as the accessibility issue, this is how we're addressing it.
Yeah.
And what are we doing for environmental concerns? Yes, we're gonna be a LEEDs building and all the other stuff. Does that replace the trees? No.
I'm just trying to move this along and just
Please.
get everyone's sense of what we're gonna call them in on. And obviously, we're not gonna have a whole, public we want to hear the answers to the questions that we've presented, not have, come to this meeting and make your, no, we want to know, what are you doing for accessibility? That, I'm getting 1, 2, I know where you stand. I'd like to hear from Mrs. Gonzalez in terms of, what do you want to hear about? Anything or nothing?
I am concerned about the accessibility. That was my
Yes.
main concern.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel like they have to be here as long as they're showing us and answering the question that we asked them.
But we tried that and that didn't work, so. We actually tried that and we didn't get that
Okay.
answer, so.
So then they need to come in.
So I'm.
But I don't want a big room full of, I don't want this other stuff. I'm more concerned just about that
Yeah,
accessibility.
We're not the mouthpiece for these people.
Right, exactly.
Well, but we do have to figure out what Mr. Wallner raised to us the last meeting.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a proper response to that request for that information. And to me, accessibility is
Number one.
really the reason why we would either ask someone in or ask us to give a concrete response back to the answer to the question. And hope that they're making it accessible and that they're, and all the technicians that are there with the level of education are gonna help out with all of these issues in the
Right.
future. So I don't think we can address all of these environmental things and, by answering that question, but I do think we should, as a board, get the proper response to a question, not go look on our website.
Well, let's, so that's one concern. The other concern is that the cost overrun from doing $35 million spent on just blasting granite.
That wasn't in the budget. I don't know if that was in the budget or not.
It's a potential $35 million
Well, okay,
extra
but
that the original site didn't have that in there. So something's being
It wasn't in the
compromised.
budget, so. again-
Something's being compromised to do that blasting. That, on the lower field, you didn't have to blast. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that comes down to, as they mentioned, the value engineering in order to meet the budget. There's some things are gonna have to give in order to,
Yeah.
but also built into a budget is generally should have been, in our case, wasn't enough, significant enough contingency, for some unforeseen expenses, but again, I don't know what their contingency is, but I'm sure it's better than what ours was.
Let's not, these are triggering discussions, and we're all coming down with a case of PTSD over.
Yeah.
No kidding.
It's all too
It's too
familiar.
fresh.
It's history repeating itself, but
Yeah, it is.
we need to give our TA some direction.
Yeah.
So we want the concrete answers to the questions we ask. We are a member community, and we do have ability to challenge it if they're not rendering it accessible for all, all the potential students that, that may want to attend there. Even though we don't have as high of a membership percentage that attends, we do have a ability to go to state agency to raise that claim if we decided to do that as well. I'm not saying that we will, but we need to have some answers. And we're not, out of this because we're a smaller community that has less people that attend. We have students that go to it.
We have the best
We have
interest
as
in it.
much right as any other community.
Absolutely.
To get the answers to the questions. And I'm sure we're not the only community asking about accessibility, so. That we wanna see, and if we can't get the proper response in writing, I think we really, then our next step would be to submit a request to attend and explain in person. And I think that, if you send the right answers, or you send the right information, and we're not left to question, what are you doing? Then we have the answers to the question of how are you making it accessible? I don't have that right now. I didn't see that in the packet. So,
The second question would be is, how did you, when you changed sites, you added on $35 million onto the project. What did you take away to pay for that? Like, something had to give.
Yeah.
Like, what did you take away from the original design that no longer exists on the hill because you had to spend $35 million just to get the foundation in the ground?
Yeah, that's the value engineering. Yeah.
That's a big question.
let's get some answers on the accessibility piece. And if we can't, then maybe the next step, Mr. Gilberto, would be to ask for a representative to come in person and explain it. All right. This was part of the TA's report. Did you have anything else you were gonna get to, Mr. Gilberto?
So that I'm
You
clear.
really weren't finished with your report.
No, I was through with the report.
all right.
I'm just looking to confirm my instructions correctly. So I am to reach back out, indicate that what was provided was not sufficient. I will note, they did say that they're working on a further presentation that was not ready for us. So that's why we got directed to the website. So I expect that will be forthcoming at some point. But am I or am I not inviting folks to come to a meeting to present?
They went out to bid. They went out to bid on what design? That's not, give the answer. If it's at a stage when they went out to bid, they've already designed it. They already have plans for it. Unless someone's doodling a picture of a that we saw, I find that hard to believe someone is just wasting their time doodling a picture for us. That had to come from somewhere.
Okay, so
I mean,
again, I just want to make sure I convey.
We need an answer to that
It's-
picture that
yeah.
we saw.
Okay.
What is that? Why is
The
that?
picture that Mr.
Where is the
Walner presented.
accessibility for that?
Mr. Wong, did you make that picture?
No, no.
I think it's on their website.
He provided it. He did
I think it's on the
provide
website, actually. I think it's there. No.
Exactly. We're not making this up, so.
I'd like to know where Judy Diamond is. I'd like to have her come in here.
Well, that's okay. Again, I'll take responsibility for it because I didn't invite her, specifically invited her to come here.
Because there's no question there's noise around this project, and it's not just me who's pointing it out. There's a number of people who are pointing out there's noise around this project. There should not be this much noise around the project. Something is going on that's not good. A few things have been pointed out to you all. If we don't want to get the answers to it, that's fine. But that's really, I mean, there's noise around this project, and it's not acceptable what I'm hearing right now from this project. It should not be this controversial. It should have been a great thing that we're all celebrating and feeling good about, and there's a lot of people who do not feel good about this project. The people you're gonna get the answers from are gonna tell you everything's beautiful. I already know the answer to that question. Don't even bother to ask, because you're just gonna get the beautiful answer, like you already saw in the packet today. You ask the superintendent what you're gonna get beautiful answers, but it's not the answers to the right questions. There's a problem with this project. The reason why they're bringing out the show is so that they can try to convince everybody that they're in control of it, even though it's been out of control for over a year now. And we're looking at a potential strong chance of a cost overrun, and then we have to go back to our communities to ask for more money. This is a repeat of what's happened before. So let's dig in now, and let's be on the record that this is unacceptable. Projects have been known to stop before. When they get too much noise, we'll be one voice of many that is adding our voice if we find it unacceptable. And if we do our studies and learn about what this is all about, I think there's concerns here. There's just really big concerns, and there's multiple concerns. And it's not dumb people who are bringing this forward. People are very smart. So I'm asking us to step up. That's what I'm asking.
But what we want to hear about is accessibility, specifically accessibility, all right?
I disagree.
But there's no reason why you can't reach out to the representative directly to get those questions answered if you want.
Judy Diamond?
Yes, of course. She's our elected representative represents us, so yes, there's no reason not to reach out.
We have written to her. She never wrote us back. The Commission on Disability wrote her and never wrote us back. That was written, Dickie I think wrote like about a month and a half ago. Never got a word back.
Okay.
Let's get real. Come on. This is like, we're playing games. This is a game.
All right, well, talk to Mr. O'Leary.
I sent her my slides. I made it clear last month we should have Judy here. That was volunteered, actually, to have her here. She's not here. And meanwhile, they're planning to start, blasting in March.
Okay.
I'm done talking.
But right now, we just have to give Mr. Gilberto some direction. there are concerns that you raised that we share with you. Of course, we're concerned of a project overrun, but first things first with what we need to get answered in concrete. You know?
Well, I think the two things are, the ADA is obviously an issue. And then the thing is that when they change the site, the probability of having a cost overrun is very, very high. And what got taken away? Those are two reasonable questions to ask, because you took, out of a $350 million budget, you took $35 million now to blast the ground. So $35 million is not going into that building other than just to create a foundation. Whereas before, that wasn't the case. So they're spending money on something to put it in a new site that they didn't have to do when it was down in the lower field. It was an easier site to build on.
But you're just looking to find out what they took away.
Yeah, what's the impact of the decision?
And put them on notice that.
There's no seats in the auditorium. I can already hear that.
Tile on the floor, no
Take the
seats
seats
in the
out of the
auditorium.
auditorium.
My knees are hitting the seat in front of me.
The brick facade's been taken off.
All right.
Is that, Michael, is that good? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
And I am specifically asking them to come to a meeting. That's what I heard.
I mean, if,
Unless I can answer the question.
right, if they had not produced a plan for accessibility and explaining away what they're holding out, that plan that they had online versus what, you know, we saw, that clearly doesn't appear to be accessible. So
So-
that's the bottom line.
So they provide, Madam Chair, through you, and I'm not trying to prolong the conversation, believe me.
Really?
I'm really not. I just want to deliver on what's being asked of me. If they produce a PowerPoint presentation, as they indicated they were going to, that it answers the issues of ADA or attempts to answer the question of ADA access and the site change and the plan for increased costs associated with that site change, would that be satisfactory to our request? I see two heads. I see three heads.
Yes, I say yes.
Four heads, okay.
Yes, I
all
think
right.
the cost overrun is a real issue. I think it'll lead to other issues, so, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
so a presentation that does that and not necessarily attendance at a meeting would be acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Gilberto, what they directed you to answer the question and what's included in here is ridiculous.
I'm not disagreeing, Madam Chair.
Yes, that's ridiculous.
Well, can we have Judy Diamond come in at the same
So
time?
let's with a straightforward answer to your question. If you get a PowerPoint presentation of blank pages that doesn't directly answer those questions, I don't care if it's 2 slides or 200 slides. If it doesn't directly answer the questions that the board is asking, then we need a representative in. Your PowerPoint did not respond to the question. Please have your representative in. Our next meeting is, and we'll ask you to send a letter inviting the representative in to explain the
Okay.
questions to the public, the members of the public in North Reading, and the board in North Reading.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to report on?
No, Madam Chair.
Let's go to board member reports and open new business. Mr. Studo.
5-member report is on display every 2 weeks as wastewater. So you heard it all. I have nothing to add.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Mr. Studo. Mr. O'Leary.
The part of mine would also be wastewater too, and I think we're meeting again, is it tomorrow morning?
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning? Oh, wait, Wednesday morning. Yeah, Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning. So you'll be hearing a lot more from us on that. The other thing is, I would just also like to mention the passing of George Stack, who's chairman of the Hillview Commission's twin sister, passed away just over the holidays, and it's untimely and unfortunate. And I did go to the Hillview Commission meeting. They were going to be reorganizing, but because of the services with the day of the meeting, it's been postponed. But in relation to the 2 new members who were there, they were welcomed with open arms. And again, the 2 former members are making themselves available to the new members, particularly Mr. Hemme, is going to help Mr. Hegarty in relation to the budget. process, and two members are very enthusiastic, looking forward to serve and protect and grow the enterprise, so it's a good thing. Other than that, I would suggest that, I don't know if it's legal, but maybe we should appropriate some money to buy some Mega Millions tickets to help fund the sewer district and the sewer project, but, $1 billion would help,
Sure
You
would.
know, and I wouldn't mind taking it for the town over a 20-year period, 30-year period, because then it'd just pay the bonds, it'd be good. But anyway, Mega
Well,
Millions.
you, having said that, you better buy those lottery tickets, because
I
if
bought
might
some.
befall you, you might win.
I
and
bought
we'll be
some.
looking for you.
Good way to-
Cover the cost.
Other than that, just once again, to the firefighters, the loss of their former chief, our condolences to them, and, because I know it hits home with them, so. Other than that, all set. And again, Happy New Year to everybody, my colleagues. Healthy New Year ahead, I hope, for everybody, and not so eventful, but, happy and healthy, prosperous. Thank you.
Mr. Walner,
I'm good, thank you.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
I have a lot to say.
Oh, let's hear it.
I'm sorry. I'll
Don't be
apologize ahead of
sorry.
time.
You don't need to be sorry.
It's early.
So CPC, I attended CPC, and spoke to them about the transportation committee that we are trying to put together. And we were trying to get a liaison from them to go on to the committee. I actually want to sit down with the TA and kind of get a better, more firm understanding of that committee. Because they had some questions that I felt like I couldn't really answer. So I will, at their next meeting, they're gonna consider who would be a liaison. But they wanted some questions answered, so. We also had an EDC meeting the same night, and the EDC continues to prepare for a wastewater proposal at the Hillview that we had to cancel when the meetings get back on. And one of the things that the chair brought forward were these little cards, which I thought were really great. So these will be handed out to people. Wastewater Proposal 2022, which will have to be changed to 2023, I guess. Sewer and wastewater questions, it gives the sewer at northreadingmass.gov. And, if you think you have any questions, so I don't know if everybody wants to look at that card. I thought it was pretty good. She also had notepads made up, so those would be handed out when people come in. Get a little feedback from you, Mr. Studo. Maybe I can just take a picture of it and send it to you.
Please.
Okay.
Very good. Did you see it? I didn't see it.
I also wanted to say that I was present for a new firefighter paramedic who was sworn in last week, Chris Jacobson, which I was really happy to be there because he graduated with my daughter from high school. So it was nice to see him going on to the department. And also that today is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. So I would like to shout out to my daughter, her boyfriend, Paolo, who's a Brookline police officer, my husband, and Mr. O'Leary's son, who was a Boston police officer. And thank them, also our own North Reading PD, and anyone who chooses to take that path. I'd like to thank them all today and give my appreciation towards them. And just one more thing that's just sitting on my heart was Damar Hamlin. I think a lot of people saw it live. If you didn't see it live, you saw it eventually. Him just dropping onto the field. He went home today, so that was great news. But I think the thing that affected me the most when I saw that was to see that entire team drop to their knees and pray. And it just, that moved me. To see a knee taken for a different reason for me was, I thought it was an amazing thing. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Gonzalez. You just made me lose my train of thought, actually. Happy New Year. I was gonna make a comment on something that just slipped my mind. I'm sorry. You can't even come back to me because you're all done, so.
Right. It's now or never.
I don't want to bring up another touchy subject, but I'm going to. When the trash gets moved again related to holidays, and we're on this now schedule of different days for different segments, how is the segment notified? Are we doing the reverse 911 call to let that segment know, or what are we doing to alert people so that they know? A simple thing like that, just a simple thing, it'll be the next day, or are we putting a banner on our website to say?
In general, it would be on the website and posted on our social media presence in general. Some instances we've done it, others we've not, but that's sort of the model. We would only be doing a reverse 911 if there was a specific delay in a specific area, or a delay of more than one day, because it's not uncommon for there to be, it slips from one day to the next, and that happened last week. So you were a Tuesday collection day, you were supposed to be picked up on Wednesday, but some folks who were supposed to be picked up Wednesday didn't get picked up till Thursday. And that wasn't unexpected, to be candid, because of the volume of trash that was out there. But in general, on the town website, on the homepage, and on the town hall, North Reading Town Hall social media page, which is now also sharing to the North Reading Community Connection as well, which is a new feature. And I'll also just note, that, of course, the North Reading Department of Public Works, which is also operating its own Facebook page to let folks know.
It seems like on the holiday weeks, they don't happen that often, but we could just do something on the homepage.
Yes,
So that people can see that. I don't think that happened this past.
it did not.
Yeah, so I think we should be doing that and just, you know, are you still the one that's managing our website?
No, we have some help now.
All right, so that person really just needs to be more of a public information person, disseminating the information to the public. Something that might not be in our grand scheme of things huge is huge to people, and trash is a big deal, so I just think we should be better at that kind of a communication and notification. That person also should be handling these missing emails and making sure that function of sign up and those people signed up they're not missing any emails. I mean, that's kind of a basic thing in 2023 that we can use to get public information out there. So both of those things, I think. And I appreciate that you've been doing it for a really long time, but whoever we have in now doing it, that, you know, kind of needs to be as much current public information as possible, including when we have the next meetings on the wastewater issue.
Sure.
And
Understood, thank you.
that would be great if you could just kind of, whoever that person is, and making sure that they really understand their role as an information person is important here. But
I'm sorry,
thinking of,
sidetracked
I was
you.
thinking of something totally different, and I can't even think about it, but it must have been very important, so. Happy 80th birthday
She's gonna
to
be
my
cursing me
mother.
later.
That's what it was.
What
Happy
was it?
80th birthday to my mother. Happy birthday, Mama. She's probably not watching.
That was
but
it?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Happy birthday, Kate, to Mama.
Today's my mother's day.
Late getting her birthday card, you're trying to make up for it.
I'll point her to this part of it. All right, and I think that's it. I don't really have anything more, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Okay, Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wallner, second by Mr. O'Leary. Mr. Studo.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Wallner.
Aye.
Mrs. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Manu Pelley is aye. All